Chapter 2786, 2786 even 4th tier would be beaten. Chapter 2786, 2786 even 4th tier would be beaten. 2786 even 4th tier would be beaten. The 4th tier heavenly venerates had arrived, but none of them spoke. In their eyes, everyone here was nothing but trash unworthy of their second glance. With every difference in tier among heavenly venerates, the gap was as great a disparity as between the heaven and the earth. They had qualifications to be so arrogant. This kind of atmosphere was quite stifling. In front of 4th tier heavenly venerates, even the 3rd tier elites seemed very tense. After all, it would be impossible for everyone to stay in the realm battlefield for the rest of their lives, so who could not take the suppression by a 4th tier seriously? The strong needed to be revered, and this was a reality that would never change for eternity. Everyone stepped aside one after another, staying away from those 4th tier heavenly venerates, as if to show them respect with such a gesture. In fact, this kind of hierarchy had always been very clearly defined. Before the arrival of these 4th tier heavenly venerates, the 3rd tier heavenly venerates had dominance, while the 2nd tiers had to show them respect, and the 1st tiers similarly also had to respect the 2nd tiers. Certainly, it was guaranteed that no one would show any mercy if a heavenly venerable seal appeared and had to be fought over. That would have been a completely different matter. However, at this moment, a young man was seen walking slowly, heading straight for a 4th tier heavenly venerate He Liqun. What does this guy want to do? He is probably going to bootlick the 4th tier heavenly venerate. Otherwise, what's he going to do? He can't be going there to provoke him, right? That's not right. That person is Ling Han. So what if it's Ling Han? This person is quite capable of stirring trouble. When they saw that this person was Ling Han, many people revealed strange expressions. They had all heard of Ling Han's story and knew that this person had a bad temper and stubborn personality. In addition, he was the most prodigious talent who had been Wu Haoyang's equal all those years ago. As for him bootlicking a 4th tier heavenly venerate, who would believe it? Hey, what does he want to do? Yuan Long was also feeling anxious. He naturally wouldn't stop Ling Han from taking a casual walk, but the latter was actually walking straight towards a 4th tier heavenly venerate. What kind of trouble was he thinking to cause? This was a 4th tier heavenly venerate who could kill a 1st tier with just a single breath. Despite there being suppression of cultivation levels here, the higher one's cultivation level, the greater the advantage one would have. Moreover, a 1st tier provoking a 4th tier would have been wrong no matter where it was. The Empress and the others all had calm expressions. They knew Ling Han too well. Once this guy made up his mind to do something, who would be able to dissuade him? Not doing anything. He's probably just going to spar with He Liqun. Ling Jinxue smiled. The corners of Yuan Inglong's mouth twitched. To spar with a 4th tier heavenly venerate. You must be mad. Even though you are incomparably freakish, a 4th tier heavenly venerate would very likely have mastered more heavenly venerable seals. This was power accumulated over time, and it was by no means something that a 1st tier heavenly venerate could compare with. Besides, wouldn't you consider how being targeted by a 4th tier heavenly venerate would make you suffer when you went back to the normal world? Those lackeys of his also revealed ugly expressions and wanted nothing more than to hide far away, drawing a clear line between themselves and Ling Han and his group. When Ling Han passed by everyone and entered into He Liqun's territory, he finally captured everyone's attention. This person, what does he want to do? Even some 4th tier heavenly venerates glanced over and were sizing up Ling Han. He Liqun also cast a few extra glances at Ling Han. In the first place, he looked down on the rest of the world in disdain, and didn't take any of the 2nd tier or 3rd tier heavenly venerates here seriously, and even more so completely disregarded the 1st tier. However, when he saw Ling Han's appearance clearly, his eyes narrowed slightly. Ling Han, killing intent immediately flared up in his heart. This brazen man actually dared to bully his son, which greatly displeased him. However, he also needed to thank this young man. It was precisely due to his provocation that He Yufeng had advanced to become a second-tier, heavenly venerate. He hesitated. Should he leave Ling Han to be dealt with by his son, or should he beat him up first to vent his anger? Don't say anything, let's fight. Ling Han raised his fists and charged forwards. What was going on? Seeing this scene, everyone was dumbfounded. Fuck, it really was a fight. He Liqun also didn't expect that Ling Han would dare to attack him. Was a first tier taking the initiative to challenge a fourth tier because he had fried his brains? If it was on the 5th spatial level, no need for it to be on the 5th spatial level. Even if it was only on the 4th or 3rd spatial level, He Liqun could suppress Ling Han with just a wave of his hand. But this was the 2nd spatial level. He only had the power of a first-tier heavenly venerate. At most, it would only be a peak-stage first-tier heavenly venerate. So how could he possibly dare to underestimate Ling Han? He quickly made his move and parried Ling Han's strike. Pung! However, his defense was useless against Ling Han. With a single punch, Ling Han hit He Liqun directly in the face, causing his nose to bleed profusely and sent him flying. Pong, pong, pong. Ling Han caught up, swinging his fists like a violent storm. So what if He Liqun was a 4th tier? Here, Ling Han could pat his chest with assurance and say that even if a 5th tier heavenly venerate was to come, he would also need to address Ling Han as Big Brother. Everyone was dumbstruck as they watched He Liqun being thrashed by Ling Han as if he was a sandbag, completely powerless to fight back. Was this really a first tier fighting against a 4th tier? Many people felt the urge to rub their eyes, wanting to confirm whether this was true. Even if cultivation level was being suppressed here, a 4th tier would only be slightly stronger than an ordinary 1st tier heavenly venerate. It should be noted that this was still above the 1st tier, so how could he be beaten up like a sandbag by Ling Han, completely powerless to fight back? Yuan Yinglong's face became even paler with fright. He swore that he had to draw a clear dividing line between himself and Ling Han upon returning this time. Otherwise, when He Liqun returned to exact revenge, he might also be implicated. How humiliating it had to be for a 4th tier heavenly venerate to be violently beaten up by a 1st tier in public. If He Liqun didn't exact revenge for this, he would also be too embarrassed to call himself 4th tier. In fact, even if he took revenge, such humiliation would definitely not be erased as well. Everyone had only one thought. Ling Han was indeed too outrageously bold. Why would he deeply offend a 4th tier heavenly venerate? Could it be that he would be able to kill him here? However, it had to be admitted that Ling Han's strength was very impressive indeed. He should be the strongest at the 1st tier. As expected of a guy who has achieved great military merits on the 1st spatial level. At first, I thought the rumors were exaggerated, but now it seems that this person really has actual abilities. Everyone was feeling rueful. Pong! Ling Han knocked He Liqun to the ground with one punch, and then stepped on his chest with his right foot. Okay, now we can talk. He Liqun was so angry that he vomited blood. He was still thinking whether to beat up Ling Han first, and it turned out that he got beaten up severely by Ling Han first instead. He really had an impulse of wanting to die. In front of so many people, how could the dignified 4th tier heavenly venerate withstand such humiliation? Young man, don't you think that you've gone overboard? A 4th tier heavenly venerate said casually at this time. Ling Han glared at him. If you don't accept it, come and fight. Otherwise, stop your blabbering. That 4th tier heavenly venerate was at a loss for words, and then his face flushed red, with him feeling a kind of urge to kill someone. You brat, you are really too arrogant. You really don't take a 4th tier seriously? But thinking about it, there was not much difference between the man's strength and that of He Liqun. He was slightly stronger, but he had not reached the point of being able to suppress He Liqun. If he was to fight with Ling Han, it was to be reckoned that his fate would be the same as that of He Liqun. So what even if he could tear Ling Han to pieces after leaving here? Could such a humiliation be erased? Thus, he no longer uttered another word. Chapter 2787, 2787, Water Level Recedes. Chapter 2787, 2787, Water Level Recedes. 2787 water level recedes. Everyone was dumbfounded again. A fourth tier was being stepped on by Ling Han, while another was rendered speechless. Ling Han really intended to defy the heavens. Of course, there was a restriction on all this. They had to be in the second spatial level. Brat! He Liqun gritted his teeth. His gaze darkened as if he was about to spit fire. Still misbehaving? Pong, pong, pong. Ling Han stomped his foot several times, causing He Liqun to groan agonizingly as the pain penetrated deep into his bones. Everyone sighed ruefully. Who else here was capable of being Ling Han's match? They looked at Geng Xiandan, who was an elite ranked 7th on the recent leaderboard on the second spatial level, and then at Cheng Guangqi, who was a prodigy ranking 9th, as well as Shi Yuan, who was ranked 10th. There were also elites on the recent leaderboard of the 3rd and 4th spatial levels, many of whom were ranked within the top 500. The eyes of these people flickered as they were inwardly calculating the probability of winning in battle against Ling Han. With the suppression of power, the possibility of them winning was less than 10%. In a battle of equal level, there was only a 10% chance of winning, and they were already elites listed on the recent leaderboard. Upon comparison, Ling Han's formidable strength stood out remarkably. Are you going to behave now? Ling Han lowered his head and looked towards He Liqun. He Liqun gritted his teeth and remained silent. He was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, so how could he not even have this much of a backbone? As a person, he could be defeated, but couldn't show any weakness and couldn't lose his dignity. Once they got out, he would make Ling Han know the meaning of regret. If you continue to misbehave, then you will be beaten until you do behave. Ling Han started hitting him again. He was indifferent since he wasn't the one who was getting beaten anyway. He Liqun was in misery. Soon, he was being hit until he was riddled with injuries. However, a heavenly venerate's self-healing ability was indeed powerful. Even though he was not specialized in defense, a 4th-tier heavenly venerate was so much more powerful than a 1st-tier, and his self-healing ability was of course stronger as well. He was continuously hit until he was severely wounded, and then speedily recovered. The same cycle repeated again and again, causing him to feel like this was a fate that was worse than death. This brat has a bit of the same graceful and charming demeanor as myself back then. The black donkey stood up, his face filled with admiration. You are merely at the 1st tier, so what do you mean by back then? The big black dog exposed him mercilessly. This brat took after me. I have endured all sorts of hardships to raise him. Yuan Yinglong felt dizzy, his feet were wobbly, and he couldn't stand steadily. He was scared indeed. He had originally thought that he had found a powerful helper, but it turned out the latter was a supreme bringer of misfortune. He Liqun was stubborn and refused to beg for mercy. This was his bottom line. If he begged for mercy in public, he would no longer be able to face others in the future. Since Ling Han had free time, he kept thrashing He Liqun while waiting for the water level to drop. No one persuaded him anymore. Firstly, they were no match for Ling Han, and secondly, they didn't have any friendly relations with He Liqun, so why should they bother to embarrass themselves? For days passed in this manner, and the water level had dropped out of sight. Everyone jumped into the lake, which now had become a huge pit, one after another. Ling Han also sent He Liqun flying with a kick. He couldn't kill him, or he wouldn't be able to return to the realm battlefield in the future. He wasn't afraid that He Liqun would take revenge on him. In the second spatial level, he was invincible. Furthermore, he wouldn't be trapped there forever. When he advanced to the 2nd tier, battling a 4th tier would definitely not be a problem. Let's go. Ling Han nodded towards the Empress and the others. One by one, they jumped into what was initially a lake and moved downwards swiftly. Boss, what should we do? Depend Radiance asked. Yuan Yinglong gritted his teeth. We have already gotten in too deep, and we can't withdraw now, so we will follow Ling Han this time. Once we leave, we will find a way to draw a clear dividing line. Yes. Depend Radiance and the others nodded. Ling Han took the lead and stepped on the walls of the lake. With a burst of strength, he was moving at lightning speed. Only half a day later, everyone arrived once again at the surface of the lake. The lake hadn't been drained, and by this time, the whirlpool had already disappeared and the water level had stopped falling. However, one could already see the bottom of the lake here, and it was no more than 30,000 meters or so, and such a distance was nothing to a heavenly venerate. Therefore, some people were eager to give it a try. It was only 30,000 meters or so it would be impossible for the water pressure to reach an unbearable level, right? Let's go. Splash, splash. Several people had immediately dived towards the bottom of the lake, and among them were several fourth-tier heavenly venerates. Ling Han and the Empress looked at each other and similarly jumped into the lake. They possessed strength beyond the first tier and were capable of conquering all opposition in this place. After entering the lake, Ling Han and the Empress immediately felt the incoming pressure, but they each formed a defensive shield around themselves to keep the water pressure out. Now the pressure wasn't a big deal to them. The others also jumped into the lake one by one, and everyone's strength could now be seen clearly. Some people were no longer able to bear it after diving down to about 3,000 meters. Their shields shattered, and the skin of their entire bodies instantly ruptured under the pressure of the water, staining the surrounding waters with blood. They had no choice but to float upwards, or they would be seeking death for themselves. There were some people who could reach 6,000 meters deep before they had to float upwards, while some managed to hold on until 9,000 meters. This was the most direct display of one's physical might. When the depth had reached 15,000 meters, there were less than 100 people left. On Ling Han's side, other than the karmic life Heavenly Venerable and Rain Emperor, the others had long since been unable to last any longer. Moreover, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable and Rain Emperor were also finding it unbearable, and their shields were on the verge of collapse. However, at this point, one could see the Heavenly Venerable seal below more clearly. Although it was not more exposed, owing to the fact that there were no longer any undulations in the lake waters, the refractive index was reduced, and one could naturally see it even more vividly. These two people stopped here, studying this particular seal. Ling Han and the Empress continued on heading downwards. They were still very far from reaching their limit. 18,000 meters, 21,000 meters, and to Ling Han's surprise, there were still other people at this depth. Those comprised Geng Xiandan, Cheng Guangqi, Shi Yuan, Shi Zhanghe, Shi Mengyu, and some others, who were all high-ranking figures on the recent leaderboard of each spatial level, but on the contrary, those several bigwigs of the 5th spatial level were nowhere to be seen. Here, where one's cultivation level was being suppressed, surviving would depend on one's capability in a battle of equal levels, and it was by no means the case that the higher one's cultivation level, the stronger one would be in this situation. Take Ling Han, the Empress, Geng Xiandan, and the others for example. These people had always maintained a low profile, and it was only now that their strength which surpassed the first tier had erupted. However, they were also extremely surprised as they didn't expect that there were actually so many people like themselves. They cast a glance at each other and continued diving further downwards. What Ling Han saw was everyone displaying their unique abilities. Most of them were being wrapped by blurry seals, resisting the pressure of the lake water. There were also a few who, like Ling Han and the Empress, were exceptionally calm. In the same way, they merely formed a shield and resisted the pressure using their own power. Those who had manifested the seals obviously had mastered Heavenly Venerable seals. Furthermore, they weren't the most widely known 7 Heavenly Venerable seals, but rather were seals obtained from other channels, and were more powerful and supported them in their journey here. But what Ling Han cared more about were those people who didn't manifest any seals. They could come this far without Heavenly Venerable seals. Why was this so? Ling Han looked at the Empress, and the latter nodded towards Ling Han. Perhaps these people had also mastered the unique power of several dimensions, or there was no other way to explain it. The Empress, whose evolution index was about 11, could accommodate the power of 100 dimensions. Even without Wally's theory and Ling Han's assistance, the difficulty of this wasn't so high that it couldn't be replicated. Chapter 2788, 2788 Crevice in the Ground. Chapter 2788, 2788 Crevice in the ground. 2788 Crevice in the ground. 24,000 meters. 27,000 meters. When they got here, several more people were eliminated from the race, leaving only Geng Xiandan, Shi Zhanghe, Shi Mengyu, Ling Han, and the Empress. Geng Xiandan, Shi Zhanghe, and Shi Mengyu also looked at Ling Han and the Empress in surprise. These two people actually hadn't used any heavenly venerable seals so far. Both were entirely supported by their own power. It would seem that they were just like them too. Then let us see who will be able to last till the end. Everyone continued to dive, but the pressure was great indeed in the last 3,000 meters. Not only had it reached the second tier, it was at its late or even peak stage, so much so that the Empress had to channel the heavenly venerable seal to resist this formidable pressure. There was no way about it, as the Empress was only at the early stage of the first tier, and it would be impossible for her to contend against someone with the battle prowess of late-stage second tier without using a secret technique. It was not only the Empress. Geng Xiandan, Shi Zhanghe, and Shi Mengyu had also channeled heavenly venerable seals. Otherwise, they would not be able to withstand such pressure. It was important to note that Geng Xiandan, Shi Zhanghe, and others had been here for many years, and their cultivation level had to be at the peak stage. Based on such a comparison, it could be seen that the power of dimension that they could accommodate wasn't much more than the Empress. They finally fell onto the bed of the lake. Upon observation, there was nothing here but ruins, with traces of the aftermath of battle all over the place. There were a lot of corpses here, as big as a mountain and lying horizontally, and people couldn't see past them at all. Some were the size of ordinary people, but the aura which they emitted wasn't weak at all, causing one's heart to throb with trepidation. These were the corpses of third-tier, heavenly venerates. After countless years, their bodies hadn't rotted at all, and it was like they had just died, with the wounds on their bodies still having traces of blood. What about the heavenly venerable seal? They searched everywhere, but there was no trace of the heavenly venerable seal anywhere. It could be seen from the surface of the lake before, so why couldn't it be found anywhere now? The heavenly venerable seal isn't something that can be seen at all times, but will only be seen after the waves rise up on the lake, so we'll have to wait for a little longer and see, Ling Han said to the Empress. The Empress nodded. Indeed, the appearance of this heavenly venerable seal required certain conditions to be met. They waited, but no one could keep channeling the heavenly venerable seals for a long time. So Ling Han asked the Empress to head ashore first. After the Empress left, Geng Xiandan and the others followed suit as it was pointless to stubbornly persist. Ling Han was still walking about at the bottom of the lake. Firstly, he wanted to examine it in detail, and secondly, it was to find out if there were any heavenly venerate tools. Years ago, there were many third-tier heavenly venerates here, and it wouldn't be strange at all for them to possess heavenly venerate tools. Ling Han kept searching, but heavenly venerate tools cultivated by the third-tier heavenly venerates had naturally developed consciousness, and once the owner had died, they would leave by themselves, perhaps directly transforming into Tao, turning back to their original form, or waiting for a new owner to refine them again, to once again fight for another lifetime. There were also others that roamed around the world. One day, perhaps they might be capable of developing true intelligence and gaining a real life of their own. Therefore, unless a heavenly venerate tool had been blown up, it would be extremely difficult to find the existence of a heavenly venerate tool. However, the problem was that a third-tier heavenly venerate was not yet capable of destroying a heavenly venerate tool. This was something that could only be done by a sixth-tier heavenly venerate, at least. Ling Han was feeling regretful there, but had no idea that those people on the surface of the lake were about to go crazy. Was this guy really human? Other people had gone all out, and could only sustain the pressure by channeling heavenly venerable seals. However, there were only a few heavenly venerable seals, so how long could they keep channeling these seals? But how long had Ling Han remained below? Moreover, he didn't even channel any heavenly venerable seals at all, yet he was able to do something that other people couldn't. Wouldn't others be shocked by this? Just how strong was this guy? After Ling Han made 2 turns, he found a crevice in the ground. This crevice in the ground was quite extraordinary. Despite the water pressure being so strong, there was no water seeping in. Ling Han wanted to go in, but found himself being hit with a strong pressure, which immediately slowed him down. After that, he felt as if he was proceeding in a muddy swamp and couldn't move another step forward. Could it be that below is the real tomb of the Heavenly Venerate? The Heavenly Venerable seal had also seeped out of this crevice in the ground, so it was incomplete, and coupled with the turbulence of the lake, it became blurred. Ling Han kept trying, wanting to enter the crevice in the ground, but every time he squeezed forward a bit more, the pressure would increase by a bit more. It was as if there were 10 third-tier Heavenly Venerates joining forces to stop him at the beginning, which was then increased to 15, 20, and 50, and even Ling Han couldn't hold on any longer. He shook his head and returned to the shore. What's wrong with you guys? Ling Han looked around and saw that most of the people stared at him with astonishment, as if he had turned into some kind of monster. Everyone was speechless. Do you know what you have done? He was so powerful it was unbelievable. Ling Han explained the situation, and everyone's face revealed their excitement. If they could get inside the crevice in the ground, then they might be able to obtain that Heavenly Venerable seal. Yuaning Long and the others were also very excited. Although they had previously felt apprehensive, they could also see the benefits now. Ling Han cast a sweeping glance at them. He didn't hide such news from them, because he had promised Yuaning Long that they would move together. But he had also seen the shortcomings of Yuaning Long, which made Ling Han unwilling to associate with the other party. This would be the last time, and it could be regarded as repaying Yinglong's previous favor. At this moment, everyone would just have to wait. Another 10 days passed, and everyone noticed that there was a dazzling light soaring into the sky from the bottom of the lake. Thereafter, the water level began to drop again. It didn't take long for the lake to completely disappear, leaving no trace of the water. If you stood at the bottom of the lake and looked around, this would be just a huge plateau. Let's go. Everyone descended one after another, all wanting to seize the opportunity. Ling Han and the others also took action, jumping towards the bottom of the lake. There were a large number of third-tier Heavenly Venerate corpses here, and they had formed an astonishing pressure of supreme might. This wasn't power, but a kind of suppression upon divine sense. Therefore, other than third-tier Heavenly Venerates who would remain unaffected, whether it was first-tier or second-tier, they would certainly feel a kind of pressure. There was no need to speak about the pseudo-Heavenly Venerates or the ninth heaven Celestial Kings. They wouldn't be able to bear it at all. With a clear goal in mind, everyone headed towards the crevice and soon arrived at the destination. Ling Han leaned forward to take a look, and sure enough, the pressure around the crevice in the ground had disappeared. "Thank you." A voice was heard from behind him. Ling Han turned his head and saw that it was Geng Xiandan. "What is there to thank me for?" Ling Han asked. "Thank you for finding this entrance for me," Geng Xiandan said. Ling Han laughed out loud. "Do you think you can take advantage of me? Don't think that your battle prowess is superior to mine just because you gained some upper hand before," Geng Xiandan said lightly, seemingly very confident. "I also offer my thanks." Another person appeared. Cheng Guangqi. Shua, a third figure landed. It was Shi Yuan. Subsequently, more elites also came over, such as Shi Mengyu, Shi Zhanghe, and several elites from the 5th level. All of them were staring at Ling Han coldly. Even if they were not Ling Han's match in this special place, the Heavenly Venerable seal was possibly right in front of their eyes, so who would possibly retreat and give it up? There's no need to start a conflict at this time, right? Shi Mengyu played mediator. In any case, when the Heavenly Venerable seal has just come into being, everyone can try to study it, so why don't we work together? Chapter 2789, 2789 A Chance. Chapter 2789, 2789 A Chance. 2789 A Chance. Ling Han pondered for a moment, and then said smilingly, "Sure." It was indeed like what Shi Mengyu said. When a Heavenly Venerable seal came into existence, anyone could be taught, but once they learned it, It could only be passed on and could not be taught. The others did not have any disagreement either. They hadn't seen the heavenly Venerable seal yet, after all, so there was naturally no need for them to rush to make a move. Everyone entered into the crevice. Though the pressure had lessened considerably, there was still some pressure. Those who were weaker couldn't pass through at all. The crevice was very thick. The further they advanced, the stronger the obstructive force became, but it was still within tolerable limits. After only 30 minutes, they had come to the end of the crevice. A massive space appeared ahead of them, and there were corpses lying everywhere, so many that one would feel numb at the sight. This was the true battlefield from all those years ago. The bodies here numbered in hundreds of thousands. There was an astonishing number of them. Everyone released their divine sense and immediately proceeded to do a search, looking for the whereabouts of the heavenly Venerable seal. This place was frighteningly quiet and also shockingly huge, and adding all the bodies lying all around, there was an indescribably repressed atmosphere in this place. Ling Han's brow wrinkled slightly in a frown. Previously, heavenly Venerable tier monsters had charged out. Then, were they the only monsters that remained, or only a portion of them, and more could appear at any time? Are you worried that there might be other surviving dregs of Hysteria's troops? The Empress asked. Ling Han nodded. It is possible that chaos will occur in the space here. If there really are any lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops, they will be having third tier's battle prowess, so we can't let our guard down. Though Ling Han, too, had battle prowess at the third tier, if he was ambushed in a moment of carelessness, perhaps he would really die. The Rain Emperor and the others all nodded. Among the people here, only Ling Han's battle prowess had reached the third tier. The others would not be able to put up any kind of resistance at all. They walked on for a while, but aside from dead bodies, there were only more dead bodies here. There was no sign of the heavenly Venerable seal. Where is the heavenly Venerable seal? Someone asked, slightly agitated. Boom! Someone moved, blasting apart the pile of bodies, wanting to see if this kind of seal could be buried beneath them. With someone taking the initiative, the others moved as well. Pong, pong, pong. Bodies flew everywhere in the air. The majority of them were Hysteria's troops, but there were also some that were the people that had sacrificed themselves for Flaming Frost Realm all those years ago, and they, too, were sent flying mercilessly. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. It was one thing for Hysteria's troops, but to treat even those who had sacrificed themselves for the Flaming Frost Realm like this, that was going a little too far. Furthermore, Ling Han called out loudly, "Stop! There may still be lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops here." However, no one listened to him. The heavenly Venerable seal was too important. Everyone wanted to be the first to get hold of it. Corpses were still flying everywhere, and Ling Han's expression involuntarily darkened. He would not allow these people to disrespect the remains of past heroes. Pong! Suddenly, a figure shot into the skies, exuding an aura of peerless dominance. This was not a corpse, nor was it one of the people that had entered here. Instead, it was a wolfman that was around 30 meters tall. It had grown out arms and legs, but it still had the head of a wolf. However, there were over 100 tentacles growing out of its back, and the sight was terrifyingly creepy. One of Hysteria's creations. Ling Han immediately confirmed inwardly. Many arms, many legs, many eyes. The unique trait of Hysteria's creations was that they always had a great number of a particular organ, and this wolfman was in line with this unique trait. However, within Hysteria's troops, wolves would be wolves. They would not become wolfmen, but now this was a wolfman. Though his whole body was covered with fur, his eyes were still exuding the light of intelligence. With the kind of existences that heavenly venerates were, after they had left the control of Hysteria, it was very easy for them to develop their own intelligence. This wolfman had buried himself under the pile of bodies all this while, and it wasn't right until someone had swept aside that pile of bodies that he finally shot out from beneath the corpses. Lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops? Kill! Everyone discovered his presence, and all of them moved, planning to kill this wolfman. Wait, This wolfman sent out a wave of divine sense. I have already gained intelligence and am no longer under Hysteria's control. I am willing to fight alongside you against Hysteria. Humph! How could the words of monsters be believed? Zhuang, he sneered. He had already drawn a sword, which he slashed out madly at the wolfman. From his very first move, he was going all out. Not only did he use a heavenly venerate tool, he was also channeling a heavenly venerate technique at the same time, and boosted himself with heavenly venerable seals while unleashing his battle prowess to the extreme, wanting to kill this wolfman as quickly as possible. There was naturally no need to speak of any rules in a battle against one of Hysteria's dregs. All of them, Shimengyu, Geng Xiandan, and elites from the 3rd level, Wang Xiangrong and He Liqun, charged, unleashing their full strength. Though that wolfman was in the 3rd tier, it could not be helped that power would be suppressed here, and he was at an absolute numerical disadvantage as well, so how could he hold up against the mad barrage of attacks from so many elites? Immediately, he was battered and exhausted. Pong, 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 pong. Right at this moment, piles of corpses burst apart by themselves one after another, and elites successively streaked out from beneath them. Tigermen, lionmen, birdmen, snakewomen, there were at least 100 of them, and they were all surviving dregs of Hysteria's troops. Hiss, there were so many of them. Everyone was taken aback. There was only a limited number of them that had entered here, no more than 20-odd. Merely in terms of numbers, they were overwhelmed by the other side. However, those like Geng Xiandan, Zhuang, and some others were still calm. They were all prodigies that could be considered invincible among those with equal cultivation level. They did not fear a disadvantage in numbers. At least the 100-plus heavenly venerates here would not be enough to suppress them. Everyone stopped, and the wolfman sighed in relief and repeated, "Every word I have said just now is true. Though we are Hysteria's creations, we are only its tools for war at the same time, easily sacrificed at any moment. However, after we have developed intelligence, we no longer wish to work for Hysteria. Our only desire is freedom. Thus, do not force us to become your enemies." Geng Xiandan and the others exchanged looks, and they all shook their heads. Outsiders necessarily had their ulterior motives. They definitely could not be trusted. However, humans were presently at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, so it would be better for them to go along with the wolfman first. When the main troops came in here, they could then eliminate all these surviving dregs. "Oh, then what do you guys want?" Zhuang, he asked. "All we want is to live peacefully. In fact, some of us can even join you in the resistance against Hysteria, and we will change shifts once every 10,000 years or so," the wolfman said. Originally, he had had 19 heads, but 7 of his heads were now severed, and the injuries were still very fresh. The person who had wounded him would definitely have been incomparably powerful to inflict such injuries that still hadn't healed over several epochs. Xiao, 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 xiao. A few more figures descended, yet they were great elites from the 5th level, such as Xin Fei, Wu Feng, and He Liqun. As more and more elites had come, everyone naturally felt more and more confident. By now, they were no longer afraid of battle, because this kind of battle would definitely cause a tremendous commotion and draw the people from the surface down here. By then, wouldn't this mere 100 or so lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops be dealt with in an instant? "My lords, what do you think?" Zhuang looked toward Xin Fei and the others. Xin Fei immediately sneered. "Why would we want these beasts to join us? Could it be that so they can attack us from the inside while Hysteria is launching an assault on us? Kill them, kill all of them." When these words fell, the eyes of these 100-plus lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops all blazed with killing intent. "Since you wanted to kill me, it was naturally impossible that I would just raise my head and wait for death. If it came to worst, they could just have a life-and-death struggle." Ling Han thought for a while, then suddenly stepped out and said, "Everyone, since these people have already developed self-awareness, why don't we give them a chance?" Chapter 2790, 2790 Crime of Treason. Chapter 2790, 2790 Crime of treason. 2790 Crime of treason. All of Hysteria's creations were death warriors. Their only thought was battle, and they had no fear of death. Hysteria's goal was not to conquer the entire Genesis world, but rather to devour the whole Genesis world, turning it into a part of its own body. Under this preset condition, any being with intelligence should oppose it. Otherwise, when doomsday really came for the Genesis world, would I still be me? Would I still be me? After advancing to the heavenly venerable tier, one would have surpassed the heaven and earth and transcended. How free and independent were they? Who would be willing to become merely a part of another elite's body, easily erased at any moment? Hence, Ling Han trusted these lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops that had developed intelligence. They would definitely not be willing to return to Hysteria's body and fight to the death for its sake again. Hysteria did not care about its own creations at all. Their only purpose was to battle and exhaust the elites of the Flaming Frost Realm, ultimately fulfilling its goal of devouring the Flaming Frost Realm. Humph, what do you know? Immediately, one of the powerful figures glared fiercely at Ling Han. Are you planning to commit treason? He Liqun demanded menacingly. He wanted to pin a severe crime on Ling Han, so he would be able to openly make a move against Ling Han when he left this place. This was a very sensitive topic, immediately causing the elites of the 5th level to all look menacingly at Ling Han. Even 3rd-tier heavenly venerates like Shimengyu, Zhuang, and the others bore baleful expressions. In the extensive history, there was indeed no shortage of weak-willed heavenly venerates that feared death and sided with Hysteria. They would work from the inside while Hysteria's troops attacked from outside, causing tremendous losses to the armies of the Flaming Frost Realm. Hence, what everyone despised the most was these traitors. Once discovered, they would be immediately executed. Yuan Long and his lackeys hurriedly retreated, maintaining a clear distance with Ling Han to show that they had no relations with Ling Han. Anything else could be tolerated first, and they could normally split ways with Ling Han after returning, but the matter of treason was too serious. If Yuan Long did not quickly draw a clear dividing line between himself and Ling Han, then even if he were killed as well, there would be no one who would declare that he was innocent. This was a great taboo, an absolute taboo. How dare you? Wu Feng also glared at Ling Han. In the eyes of a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, no matter how prodigious and freakish Ling Han was, he was still only a minor character. The Flaming Frost Realm had no lack of prodigies, but in the case of traitors, each would be immediately eliminated upon discovery, and definitely could not be spared. Ling Han chuckled. Where did you see that I have committed treason? These people clearly want to get out of Hysteria's grasp and aspire for a bright future, so why shouldn't they be given a chance? Once a criminal, always a criminal, Xin Fei declared coldly, appearing extremely disdainful. Ling Han pointed at Xin Fei. You are the criminal here. Your whole family are criminals. Xin Fei couldn't help but explode with fury. How could there be such a shameless guy? They had been speaking peacefully, so why had he suddenly started to throw insults? If this had been the 5th level, he would definitely have struck Ling Han dead immediately with a single slap. A mere 1st tier actually dared to act so arrogant. This was a sign of great disrespect. But now, he could only grin and bear it. With a flick of his sleeve, he did not say another word. Ling Han, you must not break the greater principles. He Liqun declared menacingly. There was no chance that he could kill a supreme prodigy for no reason. There were a considerable number of powerful figures that were protecting Ling Han. However, if Ling Han bore the crime of betrayal, what other mighty figure would stand up on his behalf? Zhuang, Chu Hao, or Lin Luo? None of them would. Ling Han looked towards He Liqun. To think that you could actually advance to the 4th tier with that kind of narrow-mindedness, this is truly a great shock for me. He Liqun's face involuntarily turned dark as pitch. Wasn't this just pointing at his nose, Nad saying that he was not worthy of becoming a 4th tier, heavenly venerate? But thinking about how Ling Han was a freak that was invincible within his cultivation level, he could only forcibly tolerate this. It was fine. Everything now was for the sake of labeling Ling Han. Once he became a traitor, he would become a public enemy. Even this young brother has such intelligence, so why can't you people have some slight benevolence? The seven-legged elephant man said among Hysteria's lingering dregs. He was a third-tier heavenly venerate, and addressing Ling Han as a young brother was naturally already elevating his standing. Talking of benevolence with beasts like you? Wu Feng sneered. Then how would we be able to face those of our brothers that have died? Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Another dozen or more figures landed. That crevice was not very secluded. Furthermore, once their power had attained late-stage first tier, they would be able to force their way in. Hence, as time passed, more and more people arrived. The balance of power of both sides was becoming even, and it was certain that not too long after, the side of the flaming frost realm would have the upper hand, a definite upper hand, a crushing advantage. Everyone's aura involuntarily surged. Now, even if a battle started, they would have no fear. Everyone, we are very sincere, a snake woman said. The upper half of her body was human, while her lower half was still the body of a snake. However, her grace and allure could not be concealed, causing those who saw her to feel their heartbeats quicken. Very sincere, right? Wu Feng nodded. Then, surrender yourselves to be captured. This is what I call real sincerity. How could these lingering dregs of Hysteria's troops agree to this? They all showed hints of fury. They had already said all the nice words, but was it really so difficult for them to continue living? Are you all determined to force us? A four-headed tiger man asked menacingly. Haha, you've revealed your true colors now. Zhuang laughed loudly. Outsiders would definitely have ulterior motives. Move, Wu Feng said. There were already over 80 of them here. In terms of numbers, they only had a slight disadvantage, so they were completely able to start a battle now. The two sides instantly became hostile, and battle could start at any moment. Wait, Ling Han stepped out. Why don't we give each other a chance? You, he randomly pointed out a few people. Can you guarantee that you will not die after the battle ends? Those people were all mute. How could this possibly be guaranteed? What we are fighting is a long-term war, so every single bit of power has to be made use of, Ling Han continued. You have indeed betrayed us, He Liqun declared sinisterly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and then took a stand right in the middle between both sides. Sure then, anyone who is going to attack today will have to go through me first. Ling Han, everyone shouted, all having varying thoughts. You truly wish to work for Hysteria? Gung Xiandan questioned coldly. Ling Han shook his head. I am not working for anyone. I only want to unite all powers at disposal to fight against Hysteria, and I have no wish to see a battle that originally could have been avoided cause bloodshed and deaths of our own people. Then there is nothing else left to say. Wang Xiangrong shook his head as his killing intent blazed. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. Immediately, several people moved at the same time, all of them charging towards Ling Han. He Liqun, Wang Xiangrong, Bailey Gu, Gung Xiandan. Basically, they were all the elites that could make their ways into the recent leaderboard of the various levels. These people all attacked simultaneously, their combined battle prowess extremely terrifying. Ling Han humphed and threw out a punch. Pung. These people were sent flying backwards at the same time, unable to withstand even a single strike from him. In this place where cultivation level was suppressed, his battle prowess could attain peak stage 3rd tier, so who would be a capable match for him? Gasp. Everyone inhaled sharply. This battle prowess was too terrifying, wasn't it? Now can you listen to me calmly? Ling Han crossed his arms behind his back, his eyes sweeping over them. Even 2nd-tier heavenly venerates couldn't help but feel their hearts shudder. He Liqun had taken a very terrible fall. He gritted his teeth in pain while simultaneously shouting at Ling Han, Ling Han, do you truly want to become enemies with the whole world? Ling Han smiled faintly. Don't flatter yourself. You are not yet qualified to represent the world. He Liqun gritted his teeth. He was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate. Whichever medium-level dimension he was in, He was a supreme existence, so why couldn't he speak for the world? Xiao, xiao, xiao. More and more people came in, causing the numbers of the flaming frost realm to reach as many as 200. In terms of numbers, they had already attained a complete upper hand. Facing traitors, there is no need to speak of rules. We attack together, Shenfei declared, and was the first to step out. Chapter 2791, 2791 Reestablishment of Space. Chapter 2791, 2791 Reestablishment of Space. 2791 Reestablishment of Space. As for 4th tier Heavenly Venerate, here, the 4th tier Heavenly Venerates would be suppressed. Previously, they could only be considered 1st tier Heavenly Venerates, and now they were still only 3rd tiers. There were just a few of them here, so how could they turn their disadvantageous position around? He Liqun's expression was instantly ugly. The thought naturally came to him as well. At present, their advantage in numbers was no longer effective. On the other side, there were more than 100 with 3rd tier's battle prowess, and as for their side, they only had 20 to 30 of them. Moreover, this number could not possibly further increase. Ling Han smiled. No need. I can deal with this kind of trash on my own. He took a few steps forwards. He Liqun, I will give you a chance. Battle me. It was not just He Liqun. Everyone was taken aback. Do you really think that you are invincible? Now that space had re-established itself, the power restriction had already relaxed to the level of 3rd tier. For you, a 1st tier Heavenly Venerate, your power would not be raised accordingly. So why did you have the courage to issue a challenge? He Liqun felt slightly embarrassed. If he accepted the challenge, he would become a bully, but if he refused, then wouldn't it mean he did not dare to accept even the challenge of a 1st tier Heavenly Venerate? But he immediately humphed. As long as Ling Han was labeled a traitor, what would it matter? To get rid of traitors was everyone's responsibility. He strode forwards, bearing down on Ling Han. The 12-headed lion man frowned. Young friend? It's all right. Ling Han waved a hand carelessly. He feared no one below 4th tier. You were the one to ask for this. He Liqun moved, grabbing out towards Ling Han. As he saw it, Ling Han would definitely fall into his grasp easily. Ling Han clenched a fist and met the oncoming attack from He Liqun. Pong! In an exchange of blows, the giant hand that He Liqun had extended shattered instantly. Ugh! He Liqun grunted. He raised his hand and saw that a bloody mark had appeared on his palm. Though the hand that he had previously extended was condensed from his power, it had still been destroyed with a single blow from Ling Han. Along with the backlash of power, his hand had also been wounded from the impact. What? Everyone was flabbergasted. A mere 1st tier, Heavenly Venerate. How could he possibly possess battle prowess at the 3rd tier? Could it be that now that space was re-established, the power suppression affecting those above the 1st tier had returned? However, the expressions of those elites in the 2nd tier, 3rd tier, and 4th tier shifted. They naturally were very clear it wasn't the case. Their battle prowess had already recovered to normal, or was suppressed to the 3rd tier. Then, it was either that He Liqun had not used his full power at all, or that Ling Han possessed battle prowess on the level of the 3rd tier. They were all willing to believe the former scenario. Otherwise, Ling Han's strength had reached a level that they could not believe or understand. You! He Liqun pointed at Ling Han, the expression on his face very colorful. I have not expected this. Not only have you not been crippled, you have improved even further and are freakish to this extent. For a 1st tier to possess 3rd tier's power was truly unbelievable. Cut the crap. Do you dare to battle me? Ling Han demanded coldly. This time, it is a battle to the death. After all, Ling Han had not had a good reason to kill He Liqun previously. But this guy actually dared to smear his good name with the accusation of being a traitor. Ling Han could not tolerate this. Attacking from the shadows and a poor character. He Liqun took a deep breath. Fine, we battle. The reason why he had suffered a loss in that last exchange was because he had underestimated Ling Han. This was normal. Who would have thought that a first-tier Heavenly Venerate could possibly be so powerful? However, He Liqun was a fourth tier, and even if his power was suppressed to the level of third tier, his battle prowess was definitely still top grade among third tiers. Would He Liqun lose to Ling Han? He refused to believe it. When he had been at the first tier, he had already lost to Ling Han once. If he still did not dare to accept a challenge to battle when he was now a third tier, then there would really be no need for him to continue living. He Liqun charged out once more, unleashing a fierce offensive against Ling Han. Boom, boom, boom. With the former waving both hands repeatedly, multiple spheres of light were shot from his hands, barraging madly downwards. Ling Han approached without fear, going against the flow of the light spheres and towards He Liqun. The two of them charged close to one another, and an intense battle immediately erupted. This time, He Liqun did not lose indeed. His power had reached the peak stage of the third tier, and Ling Han was also at the third tier. It was possible that Ling Han had not attained peak stage third tier, so He Liqun would definitely have the upper hand in an exchange of blows. As expected, in the intense exchange, Ling Han was clearly slightly inferior, but his disadvantage was not very large. Everyone was astounded. He Liqun being so powerful was naturally what they had expected. When a fourth tier was suppressed to the third tier, it would only be strange if he was not strong. However, Ling Han was only a first tier, so how could he be so strong? Those like Geng Xiandan, Shi Mengyu, and Shi Zhanghe felt their mouths twitch. They had probably guessed the reason for Ling Han's overwhelming strength. The latter had extracted the unique power of not just a single dimension when he was in the first tier. Actually, Ling Han had not been the first to have such an idea of fusing more powers of dimension together. After so many years of development of cultivation, various possibilities had naturally long since been studied. However, the predecessors had all encountered a bottleneck that they could not break through, and that was the fact that there was a limit to the number of powers of dimension that they could fuse together. The one who had fused the most had only fused as many as over 900, and no one could reach 1,000. For example, they had fused together several dozen powers of dimensions, so they just barely could battle against an opponent that was a tier superior to them, but prodigies like them were rare. Only the top 100 on the recent leaderboard of every spatial level could possibly achieve this. In the Genesis world, not even a whole dimension could produce one on average, which showed just how few of them there were. Chapter 2792, 2792 almost. Chapter 2792, 2792 almost. 2792 almost. How many powers of dimensions had Ling Han fused? No one was clear about it, but everyone knew that their quantity had to be staggeringly excessive. Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible for a first-tier, Heavenly Venerate to possess the power of a third tier. Although He Liqun hadn't been able to fuse more than one power of dimension, he had heard that he could make himself stronger in this way after reaching the third tier. Therefore, he was able to quickly deduce the secret of Ling Han being so powerful. Inwardly, he was aghast, and even told himself that he had to take this opportunity to kill Ling Han. Otherwise, when this guy advanced to the second tier, even if he didn't have the strength to suppress He Liqun, the latter himself would also be unable to deal with Ling Han. So, this was the only chance. Kill. He Liqun drew out a Heavenly Venerate tool, which was a long, dark golden spear. He made a sweeping motion with it, and boom, 7 seals on the spear began to glow. These were Heavenly Venerable seals. Dark Moon Spear, he yelled softly, stabbed out with the spear, and the entire world became dim and lifeless, but a dark moon rose behind him, exuding a strange aura. He Liqun was going all out, using a Heavenly Venerate technique, Heavenly Venerate tool, and Heavenly Venerable seals with the intention of suppressing Ling Han in the shortest possible time. Ling Han also drew the Divine Demon Sword and charged towards He Liqun. The Heavenly Venerate tools crashed into each other, and so did the Heavenly Venerate techniques both of them used, all unleashing their strongest power. Despite He Liqun being a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate, he had only mastered the 7 widely known Heavenly Venerable seals. He channeled them one by one, resonating with the seals on the spear, and it erupted with an even stronger power. However, as long as he was in possession of a heavenly venerate tool, how could he not have mastered these more widely known 7 heavenly venerate seals? Did he gain an upper hand? The two kept exchanging blows. He Liqun couldn't gain the upper hand at all, and the duration for which the heavenly venerable seals could release energy was limited. After 7 hours, He Liqun could no longer channel the heavenly venerable seals, and his battle prowess fell rapidly. Usually, this wouldn't have mattered. It could be said with certainty that 99% of heavenly venerates only mastered the more commonly known 7 heavenly venerable seals, while people such as Rain Emperor, and others had not even mastered these 7 heavenly venerable seals at all, because they did not have their own heavenly venerate tools. However, Ling Han was different. He obtained an incomplete seal when he became a first-tier heavenly venerate, and despite it being incomplete, its power surpassed that of those more widely known 7 heavenly venerable seals. Zhuang. When He Liqun's battle prowess plummeted significantly, Ling Han's battle prowess on the hand was increasing as he channeled this incomplete seal, which he called the 8th seal. As tables turned, the originally equal battle prowess on both sides suddenly gave rise to a huge disparity. Boom! Ling Han slashed with his sword. Although He Liqun countered with the Dark Moon Spear, he was unable to block Ling Han's power at all, and was sent flying by the blow. Ling Han stepped forward and quickly chased after him. Ding, ding, ding. He kept slashing with his sword, and He Liqun also kept parrying, but every time he received a blow, his face changed drastically as he felt his chest boiling and was experiencing unspeakable pain. After more than 10 sword strikes, He Liqun was sent flying unmeasurably far. With a bang, he fell to the ground, knocked out a deep hole, and disappeared completely from sight. However, it was only for a brief moment. With a bang, the ground shattered, and He Liqun came charging out murderously. He was holding the Dark Moon Spear, with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth and disheveled hair, looking extremely battered. With the disparity in battle prowess being more than tenfold, fighting recklessly would naturally bring about such results. He Liqun looked meaningfully at Ling Han. The former no longer intended to continue fighting, but rather wanted to leave immediately. As long as he could recover his power, even a freak like Ling Han would not be his match. He still had such confidence on this matter. Humph! How could Ling Han possibly let him go? So he pursued him. However, it couldn't be helped that it would indeed be too difficult for one party to prevent it if the other party wanted to escape when both sides had similar strength. He Liqun had taken off first, always maintaining a slight lead, with Ling Han being unable to draw any closer to him. Fortunately, there was only one exit here, and it would be impossible to pass through the crevice in the ground quickly enough, which gave Ling Han enough time to block He Liqun's path. Seeing that they were approaching the crevice, boom, a mighty attack was shot over, directly aimed for Ling Han. This was the power of the 3rd tier. Ling Han had no choice but to turn around, and threw a punch. Pong! Energy exploded, setting off a tremendous storm that reverberated in this underground world. He turned his head, and saw that He Liqun had already escaped through the crevice in the ground. Although it required some time, just an instant was enough. He Liqun was definitely out of reach now. Ling Han's face was dark. He turned around again and looked at the person who had made a move against him. That was Shenfei. Seeing that Ling Han looked angry and wanting to attack, Shenfei chuckled. I have to admit, your battle prowess is indeed amazingly strong, but Brother Wu, Brother Zhao, and Brother Niu will advance or retreat in unison with me. You will be fighting against 4 of us on your own, so what are your chances of winning? The ones whom he named were all 4th-tier heavenly venerates, who would now still have the battle prowess of 3rd tier. Ling Han was indeed very strong, being practically invincible among 3rd-tier heavenly venerates, but he was only one person, after all. Truly shameless, the 12-headed lion man said coldly. I really detest the looks of you. Brothers, let's beat up this guy together. All right. The other anomalies nodded one after another. Shenfei couldn't help as his expression changed drastically. If he was on the 5th spatial level, he would naturally not be afraid of these people, as he could have suppressed them with a flip of his hand. But now that 100 or so 3rd-tier heavenly venerates were going to attack in droves, how could the 4 of them be able to fight against them? Don't be impulsive. I can promise to bring you out of here and let the higher-ups decide your fate, Shenfei quickly said as he knew that most would have the same idea he did. Therefore, it would be best to calm these anomalies first since none of them could escape anyway. Hee, don't worry about it. Thrash first, talk later, a 6-armed monkey said. He had a violent temperament and took the initiative to attack, launching himself against Shenfei. When he made such a move, other anomalies also attacked one after another, and suddenly it became a pack of over 100 anomalies beating up 4 people, which naturally was an absolutely one-sided battle. This also intimidated Shimengyu and the other 3rd-tier heavenly venerates, and they did not dare to intervene at all. Fortunately, these anomalies were just thrashing Shenfei and the others, and had no intention of taking their lives. Brother Ling, please persuade them, Shimengyu said to Ling Han. She had always been a person who would try to play mediator. She couldn't just watch as 4 4th-tier heavenly venerates were beaten to death, right? Even if they wouldn't be beaten to death, it wouldn't be good to be ganged up on like this. How would these people face anyone in the future? Ling Han shrugged. I'm not one of them, so why would they listen to me? Do you think I'm really collaborating with the enemy? Ling Han definitely wouldn't persuade them. It was precisely Shenfei's move that allowed He Liqun to escape. Ling Han couldn't vent his frustration, and yet they still wanted him to stand up for them. Dream on. Shimengyu couldn't persuade him further. Ling Han's direct words instantly rendered her speechless. After thrashing for a long time, the monkey, the lion, and the other anomalies finally stopped. It could be seen that Shenfei's group were all bruised and battered, making for an extremely tragic scene. These 4 people felt so humiliated and enraged that death seemed like a better option. As dignified 4th-tier heavenly venerates, they were actually ganged up on by a bunch of 3rd tiers. How could they tolerate this? But none of them intended to go all out. If they hadn't even had this bit of fortitude, how would they have been able to become 4th tier? They would definitely seek revenge. Chapter 2793, 2793 Boiling Sea of Blood. Chapter 2793, 2793 Boiling Sea of Blood. 2793 Boiling Sea of Blood. Ling Han inquired the anomalies about the heavenly venerable seal. The anomalies treated him very respectfully. Firstly, it was because Ling Han was the only one who had boldly spoken up to uphold justice for them before, and secondly, it was because Ling Han's battle prowess was top-notch, thereby giving him the qualifications to be on an equal footing with them. They told him the truth, that this heavenly venerable seal was hidden deep in the ground. In the past, countless 3rd-tier heavenly venerates had spilled blood, all of which had flowed to that place. After countless years, that place had experienced changes, and a heavenly venerable seal was birthed. However, this heavenly venerable seal had yet to come into being at present, while the blood of the heavenly venerates was like underground sea. No one could possibly bear the corrosion of so much blood of the heavenly venerates, so even if they had been here for countless years, they could only wait quietly. Recently, the appearance of this heavenly venerable seal was getting more and more frequent. It should be almost time for it to come into being. By the way, there are still a few of your people here, the 12-headed lion suddenly said. What? Ling Han and the others were shocked. The 6-armed monkey nodded. That's right, there were a total of 13 people who were trapped here with us, but at that time, we hadn't developed intelligence and were continuously fighting. Dozens of our brothers died, but the other side has also lost 9 people. It wasn't until we developed intelligence that the 2 sides finally stopped fighting, but those 4 people also didn't want to stay with us, and were on the other side. Not good, the anomalies suddenly screamed. Quickly flee into the corpse pit, and make use of the corpses as cover. They didn't just yell it out like that, but executed this action immediately. Golden rays dispersed brilliantly as a heavenly venerable seal was on the verge of revealing itself. Everyone became excited. Wasn't the purpose of their coming here to obtain the heavenly Venerable seal? Ling Han intuitively made a prompt decision. Quick! The Empress and the others froze. They hurriedly followed him, got into a corpse pit one after another, and then grabbed the surrounding corpses of heavenly venerates to cover themselves. Most of the others followed suit. After all, judging from the behavior of those anomalies who were so fearful, they were definitely not putting up an act. However, a minority were blinded by greed. They kept staring at the ground, eager to get their hands on the heavenly Venerable seal at the first instance. Once they obtained it, their battle prowess would be greatly improved. Boom! At this moment, blood oozed from the ground, the surroundings, and the stone walls above their heads, all at the same time. The blood on the ground rose rapidly like a rising tide, while the surrounding walls of the cave seemed to be draining flood waters, causing the rise of turbulent waves. There was heavy rain coming from above their heads, blood droplets falling down on them. This scene was absolutely grand, but the heavenly venerates who hadn't found a bunker turned pale with fright because such blood rain or blood droplets were terribly corrosive, causing them to suffer heavy injuries in an instant. Quickly look for a pile of corpses. They quickly scattered and fled. However, it was now too late to find cover. Their skin and flesh were visibly falling off piece after piece, and soon only their skeletons were left. Pong! The skeletons fell into the sea of blood, and their divine sense was also instantly destroyed. These were basically first-tier heavenly venerates, and they were completely unable to withstand such corrosive power. Although Ling Han and the others were hidden underneath the corpses, they could still sense the situation outside, and their expressions changed drastically. The corrosive power of this sea of blood was terrifying indeed. It had condensed from the flesh and broken souls of countless third-tier heavenly venerates. Perhaps only a fourth-tier heavenly venerate could withstand it by defending with all his strength. However, there was suppression of cultivation level to the third tier here. So even if a fourth-tier or fifth-tier heavenly venerate was to take this head-on, it would bring about his demise. Fortunately, the corpses of heavenly venerates could resist the invasion of the sea of blood, causing everyone to feel relieved. Not long after, the sea of blood began to recede at an extremely fast speed, and the ground was revealed, becoming a huge plain once again. Ling Han and the others came out from under the corpses, and soon found that those who hadn't escaped in time were now naturally left with nothing but a cluster of bones and very weak signs of life. Each was already beyond saving as the remnant soul was on the verge of vanishing and could only linger for a while. Everyone sighed. These were heavenly venerates. After all, no matter which dimension they were in, they would be outstanding and well-known characters, and yet they died so insignificantly in this place. You said, there are people from the Flaming Frost realm here? Ling Han brought up the subject matter again. They had just mentioned that there had been 4 people from the Flaming Frost realm here, and the Sea of Blood had begun to boil immediately after that. The 12-headed lion nodded. They are on the other side. They were going to pass through the rocky underground. The previous war had destroyed the land here, so those 4 people of yours then traveled via underground. Ling Han and the others exchanged looks. Let's go and have a look. They came to where there was a fracture in the ground and groped their way through it. Their pace wasn't fast. Furthermore, the ground fracture had caused the formation of many forks in the pathway, so they walked for many days before coming out of the crevice in the ground, and they merely saw that there was another plane here, but the area was much smaller. They looked around and saw a person standing not far away, but if they looked carefully, they would discover that this wasn't a person, but a metal statue, with proportions that were exactly the same as a real human. Why is there a statue here? Everyone was surprised. Generally, statues were built to commemorate somebody. What was the point of building one here? They walked forwards and came to stand in front of the metal statue. It's strange, several people exclaimed, feeling that something was wrong with this metal statue. Ling Han had the same feeling. As for what was wrong, he was also unable to put his finger on it at this moment. At this time, the metal statue suddenly moved. The The magnitude of his movement was extremely small. Although the magnitude was extremely small, everyone here was a heavenly venerate, after all, so how could they not detect it? Everyone was shocked as they stared at the metal statue. The metal statue moved again. This time, the magnitude of the movement was much larger. First the left hand, then the right hand, and then the feet and Zhuang. The metal statue opened its eyes and immediately became alive. The metallic gloss faded as it transformed into a living person. Finally, someone came in, the metal statue said. After waiting for so many epochs, has the world reopened? Senior, everyone spoke. The fourth-tier heavenly venerates had all been tragically beaten up, and none of them had come down. Therefore, the highest cultivation level here was the third tier. Computing based on the time of achieving Tao, they would be the juniors of those third-tier heavenly venerates from the past. The metal statue vibrated all over and turned into a young man who seemed to be only in his 20s. His face appeared weathered and marked by vicissitudes. He said, "I am Wu Yufeng. How is the situation now?" "Senior, we are still fighting against hysteria," Geng Xiandan said. Wu Yufeng nodded and then let out a long howl, which echoed throughout this small realm. Not long after, 3 elites flew over, all exuding an aura marked by vicissitudes of time. One of them had even stepped into the 4th tier, but he still only had the battle prowess at the 3rd tier under the suppression of the heaven and earth here. This person was indeed remarkable. In such an environment, he was still able to progress further. Such natural talent in cultivation was terrifying indeed. "You are Senior Zhuang Feirui." Shi Mengyu looked at the 4th-tier heavenly venerate and suddenly exclaimed, her eyes shining with astonishing brilliance. The 4th-tier heavenly venerate paused slightly, surprised, and said, "I didn't expect that there are still people who can recognize me." He was Zhuang Feirui, the most outstanding genius of his time. Chapter 2794, 2794, Zhuang Feirui. Chapter 2794, 2794, Zhuang Feirui. 2794, Zhuang Feirui. The others also gave him face, expressing their admiration for Zhuang Feirui's battle prowess. After all, he had indeed been the strongest elite of the 4th level all those years ago. Who knew how many people admired him? Now that they saw that he was still alive, and had even advanced to the 4th tier under such terrible conditions, they naturally were very impressed. In comparison, Ling Han's way of doing things was too independent, and he gave no one any face. Now that he had fallen into a disadvantageous position, there was naturally no one who would help him. The Empress and his other companions were few and weak, after all. Thankfully, they knew that Ling Han still had a trump card up his sleeve, and were not too anxious. "Within 3 moves, I will make you beg to be spared," Zhuang Feirui declared proudly. He could no longer be bothered to continue dragging things out with Ling Han. A heavenly venerable seal flickered. He was going to suppress Ling Han completely. Ling Han sighed. Could he really only resort to this? Once the other man went all out, he would have to use that letter from Chu Hao. Just as Ling Han was about to take out the letter, boom, the heaven and earth trembled harshly again. An indescribable might assailed them, affecting every single one of them. My power is suppressed again. Damn it. The dimension has re-established itself again. Our power is again suppressed to the 1st tier. The 2nd tier and 3rd tier heavenly venerates were all muttering in displeasure. Then, they suddenly thought of a possibility, and all of them turned to look at Ling Han. Pong! With a battle cry, Ling Han threw out a heavy punch, which landed on Zhuang Feirui's hand. As great power surged, Zhuang Feirui was immediately sent flying from the strike. His figure rapidly shrunk in size, and then he crashed into the rock wall above their heads with a boom. His limbs were all spread apart, forming the Chinese character for the word Big One. Chapter 2795, 2795 tables turned. Chapter 2795, 2795 tables turned. 2795 tables turned. This, just now, it had been Zhuang Feirui that was extremely aggressive, suppressing Ling Han so hard that the latter couldn't even fight back at all. But now, in an abrupt turn of events, Zhuang Feirui had actually been sent flying with a single punch from Ling Han. Everyone knew the reason for this. It was simple. In a battle of the same cultivation level, Zhuang Feirui was no match for Ling Han. Pong! Zhuang Feirui shot out of the rock layers. His eyes were shooting fire, while his black locks fluttered windlessly. This time, he was really enraged. After advancing to the heavenly Venerable tier, he had never suffered such damage. Furthermore, he was greatly at the advantage previously, expressing a strong disdain towards Ling Han and looking down on him. But now, he had actually been sent flying with a single punch from the latter. This was equivalent to having tossed all those words of humiliation he had spoken before right onto himself. How could he not feel humiliated and furious? Without any other words, he directly charged over. He wanted to blast Ling Han away, washing away his previous embarrassment. In a battle of equals, suppressing you will be a piece of cake for me. Ling Han moved and pressed down his palm in Zhuang Feirui's direction. However, Zhuang Feirui was a super genius, after all. Though he was not as freakish as Ling Han was, even with his cultivation level suppressed to the first tier, his power still reached the second tier. Previously, Ling Han had been fighting a fourth tier with third tier power, but now he was using third tier power to bully a second tier. Actually, there was still a gap of a single cultivation level between both sides, but the circumstances of weak and strong had been completely reversed. This time, it was Zhuang Feirui's turn to bear up with great difficulty. One after another, he was using heavenly venerable seals and also unleashing heavenly venerate techniques, but he could still only manage to just barely get by, just like how Ling Han once had. Arrogant. Just continue being arrogant. Ling Han humphed. He brandished his fists in a flurry of punches, the speed of his attack increasing further and further. Zhuang Feirui bore up, his teeth clenched. He was absolutely dead set against lowering his head in front of Ling Han. For someone as proud as him, this was practically even worse than killing him directly. He had a strong belief that the space established here was drastically changing, and it was possible that it would not take too long before they returned to the fourth spatial level. When that time came, he would definitely make Ling Han pay for this. Hee, then I will suppress you first? Ling Han did not dare be too careless either. The establishment of space here was too bizarre. No one knew when it would become the fourth spatial level, and when it would return to the second level. Pong, pong, pong. Ling Han's punches were domineering, beating down on Zhuang Feirui so hard that his face was covered in blood, looking extremely tragic. Shi Mengyu and the others were rendered completely speechless. A battle of equal levels was the best show of who had the more freakish talent, and without a doubt, this person was Ling Han. Just how freakish was this guy? Exactly how many powers of dimensions had he extracted? But countless facts had proven that the total number of powers of dimensions could not exceed 1,000. Otherwise, even if one could bear with it for the moment, he would still explode from the overflow as these powers grew in strength. All cultivators started from the first tier, followed by second tier and so on, and while you, a sixth tier, were indeed capable of suppressing over 1,000 powers of dimensions of low-level dimensions, how could it be that your sixth tier strength came out of nowhere? This was a paradox. To reign over more than 1,000 powers of dimensions, at least fifth tier's power was needed, but cultivating the power of dimension had to begin from the first tier at the latest. So how could this be done? Precisely because these people were prodigies, they were even more confused. For those like Shi Mengyu and the others, they had several dozen powers of dimensions inside their bodies, but this was their limit. Even one additional power of dimension would be enough to cause their bodies to explode. How could Ling Han be so powerful? Pong! Ling Han shot out a kick, which landed on Zhuang Feirui's lower torso, sending him flying directly. The former set off in quick pursuit, and pong, pong, pong. He forcefully kicked Zhuang Feirui apart in two in a series of kicks. However, the vitality of a heavenly venerate was really too strong. With a single thought, the two halves of Zhuang Feirui's body instantly pieced themselves back together. With a streak of primal chaos, his injuries rapidly disappeared. Pong. However, he had only just barely healed his injuries when another punch from Ling Han had already crashed into his face. Instantly, half of his face was completely gone. The battle thus continued in the process of his being tortured repeatedly, causing his injuries to endlessly become more and more severe. No one helped. They did not dare to. By now, Ling Han's battle prowess was at the 3rd tier. Anyone who dared to face him now would only be tortured in return. Zhuang Feirui did not dare to face Ling Han head-on. He began to use escape measures to drag out the time. Once the space was re-established again, he would begin his counterattack and wash away his previous humiliation. One fled, while the other pursued. There was a difference of a cultivation level between them in power. It was already very hard for Zhuang Feirui to escape in the first place, and with the restrictions in space here, it was even more difficult for Zhuang Feirui to escape. He was continuously blasted, with his arms, legs, and head being severed repeatedly, which was too horrible to look at. Geng Xiandan sighed. Wu Yufeng sighed. Bai Ligu sighed. Shi Mingyu sighed. In their impression, Zhuang Feirui's strength had practically reached an invincible level. In the past, he had been acclaimed as the strongest prodigy, but now he was actually being chased and beaten. This really made one feel rueful. The prodigies of this generation were those that truly surpassed the generations. Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and Wu Haoyang, the 3 heavenly kings, would make so many veteran elites flush with shame. They had originally thought that Ling Han had approached his end, yet they had not thought that this guy had only been stabilizing himself. Once he burst out, he would be world-shaking. Wang. All of a sudden, golden light spread out. The heavenly Venerable seal had appeared once more. Everyone turned their attention over. Even if Shi Mingyu worshipped Zhuang Feirui as her idol, she still determinedly averted her gaze. They were all heavenly venerates, and had long since discarded any thought of romantic notions. There was nothing more important than supreme strength. This time, more of the seal has appeared, Wu Yufeng exclaimed in shock. He had already been here for several epochs. Every time the heavenly Venerable seal appeared, he naturally would study it, so he was the most qualified to say this. The others nodded as well. The heavenly Venerable seal that was revealed this time was indeed even bigger and even more complete than ever before. Furthermore, it was no longer blurred. It seemed like it was rising up from beneath the ground. They studied it hurriedly. Once the heavenly Venerable seal really came into existence, it would not last too long. Very soon, it would disperse into the heaven and earth. Actually, if it were not for the fact that this was where 2 realms collided, there would be no way that a heavenly Venerable seal would exist. It would have long since been erased. Ling Han also stopped. Zhuang Feirui was just about to turn his head to look towards the heavenly Venerable seal, but Ling Han, without even turning his head, delivered a straight punch right onto his face, and he instantly collapsed. He did not torture Zhuang Feirui any further, but rather studied this seal first. Indeed, the seal this time was more complete, but this was in relative terms. About half had been revealed, but this half was very clear and no longer had any feeling of blurriness. There was complete silence. Everyone was studying this heavenly Venerable seal. No one knew just how many heavenly Venerable seals there were in the world, but every time one appeared, it would cause great strife as people fought madly over it. Everyone had their own intentions. Yes, hysteria had to be opposed, but they themselves also had to become stronger. This time, it seemed like this heavenly Venerable seal had really come into being. Golden light shone brilliantly and did not disperse for a long time. Zhuang Feirui gradually regained consciousness. With a flip, he scrambled to his feet and was just about to attack, but when his eyes swept over that golden light, he forcefully suppressed this impulse. His top priority was the heavenly Venerable seal. He would obtain it and then seek Ling Han out for revenge. He also sat down in a cross-legged position and began to study this heavenly Venerable seal. However, his expression immediately changed drastically. That was because this heavenly Venerable seal was actually cracking. It would not last for too long, and was about to disperse into the heaven and earth. Chapter 2796, 2796 Contending for the Heavenly Venerable Seal. Chapter 2796, 2796 Contending for the Heavenly Venerable Seal. 2796 Contending for the Heavenly Venerable Seal. Shio, shio, shio. Instantly, over a dozen people rushed out at the same time, bursting down into the ground. Everyone knew that the Heavenly Venerable Seal had indeed come into existence, but it was also precisely due to this that there was no way that it could last for a very long time. Very soon, it would shatter and disappear. Hence, they had to dive underground to catch a glimpse of the true appearance of the Heavenly Venerable Seal. No one knew how long this seal would be able to last, so they had to be quick. Ling Han, the Empress, Zhuang Feirui, and the others were among them. They continuously advanced further underground, searching for the true location of the Heavenly Venerable Seal. However, the farther they progressed, the greater the pressure ahead of them would be. It was like they were ordinary people that had entered into a swamp, and every step was tremendously difficult. Pong, pong, pong. As they rushed onwards, they were still fighting madly. The Heavenly Venerable Seal had already come into being, and only one person could attain it. Hence, they had to contend with one another now. No matter who you were, they definitely would not give in. Boom! Zhuang Feirui attacked Ling Han. He considered Ling Han as his strongest opponent. With a kick, Ling Han sent the other man flying, but quickly after, he let out a soft exclamation of surprise. The dimension had re-established itself again. This time, it had become the fourth spatial level. Ling Han, it's my turn now. Zhuang Feirui erupted in loud laughter as he charged towards Ling Han. He naturally could feel that his power had recovered at least to the third tier. He charged back, and he instantly suppressed Ling Han completely with a spike of power. Of course, it was not the time to clear debts now. After Zhuang Feirui sent Ling Han flying, he rushed forwards once more. Only after rushing a few steps forwards, he frowned. That was because space had re-established itself again. Ling Han charged over, suppressing him. However, Ling Han only managed to advance a short length forwards, and the suppression of the dimension was once again relaxed to the fourth level. Ling Han shook his head. It was not that space kept re-establishing itself, but rather that this was where the second and fourth spatial level had collided. They contained parts of one another, and that was the reason for this situation. Zhuang Feirui and Ling Han battled endlessly. Sometimes, it would be Zhuang Feirui who had the upper hand. At other times, it would be Ling Han. The two of them continuously exchanged positions of advantage and disadvantage. It was completely dependent on the spatial level they were in. However, everyone's progress was slowing down further and further. The pressure here was really too frightening. Who knew the extent of souls, blood, and flesh of third-tier, heavenly venerates that became the center which had nurtured a heavenly venerable seal? How could it be so easy to come close to it? From the weaker to the stronger, everyone stopped one after another. Gung Xiandan stopped, Shi Zhanghe stopped, Shi Mengyu stopped, the Empress stopped. Even as strong as the Empress was, it could not be helped. She only had second-tier power, after all, so there was no way she could match a third-tier heavenly venerate. Only Zhuang Feirui and Ling Han were left. They were both struggling to advance forwards. At the same time, they were still clashing, so their progress was even further slowed. Would they really be able to make it to the end, and who would make it there first? Ling Han and Zhuang Feirui battled intensely. They were already continuously penetrating deeper underground. A sea of blood had appeared ahead of them, and there was a golden seal that was glowing at the bottom of this sea of blood. However, it was being weighed down by a massive boulder. Thus, only about half of it could be seen. Kill! Ling Han and Zhuang Feirui battled even more intensely. They were using all the means at their disposal to send the other man flying so that they would be able to take this heavenly venerable seal for their own. And now, what mattered was actually not which of them was stronger, but rather who had the better luck. Would the space closest to the Heavenly Venerable Seal be the second level or the fourth level? The two of them rushed forwards. Both of them knew that anyone could turn over that giant rock, and that Heavenly Venerable Seal would emerge, but at the same time, it would also immediately disappear. Only one person could obtain this seal, and that would be the first person who could displace the rock. They were close, and they had reached it. They had already arrived at the side of the giant rock, and Zhuang Feirui's expression immediately changed drastically. Fuck, this was actually the second spatial level. Pong. He had not even finished the thought when Ling Han had already sent him flying with a single kick. He released a battle cry filled with defiance. Why? 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 Ling Han flipped the great rock over resolutely. This seal was already beginning to shatter. It would not take too long before it disappeared completely. He definitely had to be decisive and could not waste any time. Taking the Empress and the others here to study it together was completely unrealistic. Boom! Boundless golden light blazed brilliantly, surging to the top of Ling Han's head, and then sank in. Xiao, xiao, xiao. The light surged continuously, and the seal vanished in a mere instant, and so did the golden light. Ling Han immediately felt the frightening corrosion assault him, and he quickly rushed into the air. Pong! He burst through the ground layers and out of the underground. His whole body was covered with injuries, his skin corroding, and the corrosion was still continuously spreading. Ling Han quickly channeled the indestructible heaven scroll to oppose it, and the corrosion immediately stopped. However, once he stopped channeling the indestructible heaven scroll, the corrosion would also continue, so there was no way he could be careless. The Empress and the others hurriedly gathered around him and asked about his condition. I'm fine. Ling Han nodded. He was only sustaining the corrosive power of the third tier heavenly venerates. He only needed some time, and he would definitely be able to get rid of it. Pong. Zhuang Feirui also charged out from below the ground. He was not much better, as there were multiple holes all over his body. He glared harshly at Ling Han. Ling Han had already obtained the Heavenly Venerable Seal, and unless he could forcefully extract it from him, there was absolutely no way he could obtain it. However, everyone was fighting hysteria now, so who would dare commit such a great crime now? Humph! With a flutter of his sleeve, he charged out of the ground crevice and in a different direction. Since he could no longer obtain the Heavenly Venerable Seal, he would then kill all those anomalies to vent his anger. Ling Han did not move. He was sure that there was no way Zhuang Feirui could do it, because he had also been corroded by the power of the heavenly venerates inside the Sea of Blood, and would need to expend a lot of power to suppress the corrosion. Going by that account, if someone said Zhuang Feirui could still fight against around 103rd tier heavenly venerates, Ling Han would not believe it. Let's go back, Ling Han said. This time, he had really reaped abundant rewards. Even a 6th tier heavenly venerate would be tempted by a heavenly venerable seal. In fact, even a 7th tier heavenly venerate would be interested. Every additional heavenly venerable seal meant additional battle prowess. Why shouldn't they take it? The Empress drew Ling Han into the celestial guest residence. Ling Han's present condition was not suitable for battle. He still had to take a good rest. With the Empress, the karmic life heavenly venerable, and other powerful characters leading the way, the group successfully left the Black Waterfall Mountain and returned to the true second spatial level. Here, the Empress's battle prowess could be considered top tier. She would not fear anyone's challenge. After returning to base camp, Ling Han concentrated on recuperation. There were too many powers of third tier heavenly venerates and their resentment, and he would have to get rid of them one by one. Hence, after spending around 100 years, Ling Han finally recovered completely. He came out of seclusion, and the Empress filled him in on the recent events. What was the most groundbreaking was naturally the fact that he had obtained a complete heavenly venerable seal. This was something that even a 6th tier heavenly venerate would covet. Who knew if Ling Han would disappear forever when he left the realm battlefield one day, captured by an elite so that they could extract the heavenly venerable seal from him? Of course, it was definite that Ling Han was not the only one to obtain a heavenly venerable seal, But no one would speak out about this kind of thing. Who would publicize it like with Ling Han? The second event was Zhuang Feirui's return. He had once been the greatest prodigy of the 4th level, and not only had he not died now, he had even advanced to the 4th tier. This was a very great piece of good news. It was said that even the 7th tier heavenly venerates had been alerted, and a decree was issued to praise Zhuang Feirui for his feat. Chapter 2797, 2797 A Father Again. Chapter 2797, 2797 A Father Again. 2797 A Father Again. The third piece of news was regarding those anomalies that had professed their allegiance. Correct. After the discussion of those mighty figures, they decided to give these anomalies a chance and sent them to the 4th level to join the armies of the Flaming Frost Realm. Of course, no one would trust them easily. Trust was something that they had to earn themselves. Ling Han scratched his head. Then, I am a popular guy right now, and everyone wants a bite of me? The Empress smiled beautifully. I don't know about others, but I do indeed very much want to bite you. Ling Han's heartbeat involuntarily quickened. This wife was already too beautiful for words, and now that she was deliberately flirting with him, how could he hold himself back? Pung. He pounced on her. However, before he could proceed to make the next move, bewitching Maiden Ro had suddenly barged in, calling an abrupt halt to Ling Han's actions. Fuck, this witch had to have done it on purpose. Ling Han spent an affectionate time with the two women and began his cultivation again. After obtaining the heavenly Venerable seal, he had not studied it seriously yet. He had previously been recuperating all this while, and only now did he manage to get some time to study it. After sitting down quietly, Ling Han studied this newly gained heavenly Venerable seal in his mind, and he named it the 9th seal. He continued his analysis and fully comprehended this seal, taking at least 300 years to do so. Ling Han channeled this seal, and then extracted the power of heaven and earth. Instantly, that unique power surged towards him. This seal had increased the efficiency by about 15 times. This was even stronger than the 8th seal. However, Ling Han immediately shook his head. The 8th seal was incomplete, and there was only a third of it. If he could complete it, the efficiency would possibly be increased to 20 or 30 times, far surpassing the 9th seal. Thus, he focused his energy on mending the 8th seal. Time continued to pass, and his progress was negligible. In fact, it could not be considered progress at all. Though he was trying to mend it, it had not increased his efficiency by even the slightest bit. Because his cultivation level was too low, it could not be helped. Since it could not be helped, he would set this aside for the moment. Ling Han boosted himself with all 9 heavenly Venerable seals. Zhuang. The mystical power of heaven and earth surged towards him, increasing his efficiency to about 40 times. Ling Han came out of seclusion. He chatted with the women, gave some guidance on cultivation to his son and grandson, and generally had a relaxed time. It was not that no one had made an issue of Ling Han's treason, but even the higher-ups had agreed to accept those anomalies. Who would dare mention this matter again? Wouldn't that be deliberately trying to oppose the higher-ups? Hysteria's army did not disappoint, and launched a considerable number of assaults again. However, with Ling Han present and unleashing the might of the 3rd tier, who would be able to cross over a single step? When the period of 1,000 years was over, the 2 leaderboards were finally updated, and Ling Han's name had made it to both the recent leaderboard and general leaderboard at the same time. 934th on the general leaderboard, and on the recent leaderboard, 1st place. This military credit was truly shocking. Simultaneously making it onto both leaderboards, Ling Han was definitely the first. Even Lin Yulian and the other heavenly kings had not been able to do so. This naturally made Ling Han famous for a while. The Empress's military merit was also glorious. She was ranked 2nd on the recent leaderboard, but there was still a very wide gap between her and Ling Han. Thus, she had not made it onto the general leaderboard. Fame has its price. Originally, I was already the butt of public criticism, and now I have simultaneously made it onto both leaderboards. I am sure that there would be a considerable number of people who would want nothing more than to capture and refine me into medicine, Ling Han murmured. Previously, the Heavenly Venerate Desolate Eternity had suppressed Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu, using himself as a furnace, and wanting to refine Heavenly Venerate Wu Lu and snatch his fruits of cultivation so that he could push open the great doors to the second tier. Though he had ultimately failed, it was also clear that Heavenly Venerates could indeed be refined like they were great herbs. Ling Han had to be careful. Husband, why do I feel that not only are you not the slightest bit worried, but rather seem like you are showing off proudly? Bewitching Maiden Ro walked over and leaned against Ling Han. This is very much like husband's style of doing things. Helian Xuanxue expressed her agreement with a nod. Both her son and grandson were outstanding, so her mood was constantly good. However, she was also a little anxious because she had yet to get a great-grandchild. I'm sure that it must be because it has been a long time since someone has caused trouble for husband, which made husband a little impatient. Shui Yinyu giggled. Teacher Shui, as I see it, you are the impatient one here. Do you wish for husband to dote on you a bit? Li Sikhan joked. Ling Han shook his head. When there were no strangers, these wives were all very bold and unrestrained. At times, their words would make even him blush. She. The doors were pushed open, and the Empress walked inside. Ling Han glanced at her and couldn't help but feel surprised, because the Empress's expression was very affected, as if she had just sustained a very great shock. He hurriedly leaped up, wrapped his arms around the Empress, and asked, Wife, what is it? Who has bullied you? Tell me, and I will avenge you. The Empress threw a punch at his chest. It's you. Instantly, Ling Han relaxed slightly and said, How could I bully my wife? What exactly happened? I have, the Empress said one. What have? Have what? In this instant, Ling Han did not manage to react. Though he had already become a father once, that had been as long as an epoch ago. He thought that his cultivation level was too high, and it was possible that he would never have any other children. Idiot, big sister is pregnant. Realization dawned immediately on bewitching Maiden Ro, and she lightly rapped Ling Han's head. Congratulations, big sister. All the women gathered around her. They were all very pleased. Of course, they also felt a small amount of dejection because they, too, very much wanted to have a child that belonged to them and Ling Han. However, now that the Empress was pregnant, it meant that a high cultivation level did not mean infertility. There was still a chance for them. Instantly, they all turned plaintive looks on Ling Han. What they were trying to say was, Husband, you cannot favor one and discriminate against the others. At night, you have to visit our rooms frequently, dividing your attention equally. Ling Han shivered from their looks, but when he thought about how he was going to be a father again, he was again delighted. Involuntarily, he wrapped his arms around the Empress's lower abdomen, leaning his head against her to listen quietly. As expected, he heard a faint sound. He couldn't help but bare his mouth in a grin, joy written all over his face. On this day, he invited A. G. Wuming, the karmic life Heavenly Venerable, and the others one after another, but did not talk about anything serious with them. He just continued to force alcohol on them, confusing the karmic life Heavenly Venerable and the others. The large black dog even wondered if some problem had happened with Ling Han's sexual orientation. He would run off every time he saw Ling Han, not giving him any chance to hook an arm around his shoulders at all. Ling Han decided to roam around the world for a bit. He was going to prepare a gift for his unborn child. When Ling Jianxue had been born, Ling Han had not been present at all, and had only received the happy news long after the birth. But this time, he had no wish to miss out on such an important event. He made some calculations. The child would be nurtured extremely slowly in the Empress's womb, but this was not a bad thing, but rather a good one. How strong was the Empress? The longer the child stayed in the mother's body, the more nutrition it would absorb, and naturally, the greater its beginning would be. Possibly, I would have to wait tens of millions of years. Ling Han estimated. This time was really astonishingly long. Ling Han nodded. This was just right such that he had time to make preparations. He did not give the Empress any celestial medicines. They were already heavenly venerates, So any natural treasures or celestial medicines would be useless to them. Or rather, the Empress herself was the best spiritual herb for the child. With her using her essence to nurture the baby, this child would definitely be amazing. Ling Han went to apply for leave. He was going to search for a great fated opportunity for his child. He had outstanding military merits and added with the fact that this was not an indefinite period of leave, but would rather only be 100 million years at most. The person in charge of the second level approved the request for leave very quickly. Chapter 2798, 2798 Accommodating Dimensions. Chapter 2798, 2798 Accommodating Dimensions. 2798 Accommodating Dimensions. After Ling Han had successfully applied for leave, he didn't take any action. He was too great a target now. First of all, he had offended many people, such as He Liqun and Zhuang Feirui, who surely really wanted to kill him. In the second spatial level, they were not Ling Han's match at all, so they would definitely wait for Ling Han to leave the realm battlefield, and then wait for an opportunity to make a move. Although Ling Han's battle prowess was heaven-defying, he was limited by his cultivation level. After all, he would definitely not be able to beat a fourth-tier heavenly venerate, not to mention that Zhuang Feirui was actually a super genius. Under normal circumstances, his battle prowess was probably even nearing the fifth tier. There was no way Ling Han's application for leave could be kept a secret. Those with ulterior motives against him had to have already gotten the news. Ling Han waited as he had 100 million years of leave anyway. He had deliberately asked for such a long period as, admittedly, the thing that he wanted to get was slightly difficult to obtain, and also because he wanted to create a diversion. Time passed slowly. Ling Han did not take any action. He simply kept his wives company and would often speak to the child through the Empress' stomach. Several thousand years later, Hysteria's army launched an extremely violent attack. This time, it was a large-scale battle that was rarely encountered in 100 million years, and the multitude of Hysteria's armies storming over was overwhelming. Even with a super elite like Ling Han in command, they still couldn't defend their base successfully and had to move back the front line. Ling Han didn't let the Empress join the battle. Although she was strong, she was pregnant with a child of the Ling clan. Ling Han didn't want his child to die in the mother's womb. However, when the war ended, Ling Han suddenly disappeared. He deliberately used such chaos as a cover. No one knew when he had left. When Zhuang Feirui and the others found out, they also chased after him, but it was too late, and they couldn't catch Ling Han. As soon as Ling Han left the realm battlefield, he began to traverse through space. This was an ability that no outsider knew about. Each power of dimension within his body was a coordinate, which could resonate with the corresponding dimension, allowing him to find the correct path when he traversed the Genesis world, so he wouldn't lose his way. Even the Empress wasn't capable of doing it, as she had fused the powers of dimensions into one core, and they were no longer individual entities. Naturally, she no longer possessed the characteristics of each dimension, and thus couldn't act as a beacon. Decades later, Ling Han came to a low-level dimension. Here, the realm war was still ongoing, but as Ling Han had persuaded them previously, many heavenly venerates had already given up, yet there were still some heavenly venerates who were still unwilling to do so and were still fighting. Of course, Ling Han didn't come here to call them for an accounting. It was because the two great dimensions here had experienced a fierce collision, and there was a very high possibility that a precious treasure that could drive all the celestial kings crazy would appear. The core of the dimension. Of course, it was impossible for Ling Han to directly pluck out the core of a real dimension, which would lead to the loss of hundreds of millions of lives. Although Ling Han wanted his child to win at the starting line, he wouldn't disregard or ignore other living beings. Otherwise, what difference would there be between him and Hysteria? However, this place was very similar to the two-realm battlefield of the immortal realm and foreign realm from the past. The collision of two great worlds had created a new realm, which was currently still evolving, with the possibility of producing new life in the future and developing into a new world, but that was still quite far away from now. What Ling Han wanted was the core of this newly formed world, just like the one he had obtained back then. How to obtain the core was a very simple matter. The difficulty lay in how he would give this core to the child. Only the person who first obtained the core of the dimension could become the master of the dimension. After it was transferred, the core of the dimension could only be used to study the power of heaven and earth. Could Ling Han simply take the entirety of this newly created world? This was the reason why Ling Han took such a long leave. Otherwise, how long would it take for him to extract the core of the dimension? At the moment, it was too easy for him to traverse through the Genesis world. Perhaps even the 7th-tier Heavenly Venerate could not be compared to him. However, it was just that the realm battlefield was particularly unique, and he hadn't been able to fully put this ability to good use. Ling Han studied the matter carefully. After hundreds of years, he had an idea and put it into action. He started digging out from the point where the two worlds collided in this heaven and earth. One had to be extremely careful because this was snatching food from the tiger's mouth, which meant it was a very dangerous act. Even if the two low-level dimensions were not as powerful as Ling Han, he still wouldn't be allowed to do whatever he wanted, because this was equivalent to initiating a realm war involving territorial disputes. Therefore, Ling Han had to suppress both worlds. Furthermore, this new heaven and earth could not be destroyed by the impact. Ling Han needed to invest a lot of energy, and he had to meticulously control every step down to the smallest detail. Time passed continuously, and soon 10 million years had passed. Ling Han finally revealed a smile as he spread out his body, which had enveloped a vast heaven and earth. This was the new world. If it was set aside after it had been dug out, then this new piece of heaven and earth would soon exhaust its spiritual chi and be turned into wasteland. After all, this wasn't a real dimension and could only be described as a small world. However, after being picked up by Ling Han, it became completely different. There were endless powers of dimensions within Ling Han's body, which could be regarded as a miniature version of the Genesis world. In that case, why couldn't he make use of a Genesis world to nourish a small world? In the future, he could place this piece of heaven and earth back in its original location. It wouldn't belong to any dimension, and as long as it didn't get destroyed by elites, it could exist for a very, very long time, which would be enough for his child to be the master of the dimension for many years. Then, wouldn't it be easy for him to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier? This was undoubtedly extremely troublesome. However, to Ling Han, what could be wrong with paving the way for his own child? Moreover, would he be the only one capable of thinking like this? Ling Han couldn't help but think of young big shots such as Lin Yulian, Xian Chihu, and the others who were able to make such great advancements. Could it be that they had obtained the core of a dimension when they were young and had access to power of dimension on a daily basis and advanced to become a 4th-tier Heavenly Venerate in just 1 billion years as a result? This was quite fishy. Ling Han's advancement was no longer slow. However, unless he could master more than 30 Heavenly Venerable seals, it was absolutely impossible for him to advance to the 4th tier within 1 billion years. Therefore, he had already lost at the starting line. It was all right, for speedy advancement didn't mean that one's future would definitely be revolving around suppressing others. No, it didn't matter whether it was Xian Chihu, Lin Yulian, or Wu Haoyang, as they were all stuck at the 4th tier, and had not stepped into the 5th tier after one epoch, giving others enough time to catch up. Ling Han believed that his body had accommodated countless power of dimensions, and he himself could be regarded as another Genesis world, so there absolutely wouldn't be any bottleneck in achieving the 7th tier. He started to head back. Ling Han went away quietly, and his coming back was also quite sudden. Without anyone suspecting, he suddenly returned to the 2nd spatial level, first to cancel his leave, and subsequently to accompany his wife. The Empress' lower abdomen was already revealing an obvious bulge. From the looks of her pregnancy, she was only 3 or 4 months pregnant, still far away from giving birth. Ling Han was in no hurry. This child would grow up too fast after birth, and would in the blink of an eye become an adult who would either marry a wife or get married to a husband and start a family. Therefore, Ling Han really cherished the present time very much. There had been almost no battles on the 2nd spatial level recently. It was said that hysteria was concentrating on attacking the 6th spatial level and committing all the production capacity to the 5th-tier heavenly venerates. Therefore, the pressure was smaller on the other spatial levels. This wasn't a good piece of news. Chapter 2799, 2799, Great Turn of Events. Chapter 2799, 2799, Great Turn of Events. 2799, Great Turn of Events. By now, the 5th-tier heavenly venerates on the 6th level were no longer enough to stop Hysteria's army, and because of this, many 6th-tier heavenly venerates rushed as reinforcements to the 6th level. The war situation had already reached a boiling point. On the side of the Flaming Frost Realm, more than 10 5th-tier heavenly venerates had already died, and even one of the 6th-tier heavenly venerates had perished. This was a massive loss. This was very bad. Though they could still hold the fort now, if Hysteria's army suddenly changed the direction of their assault one day, for example, to the 7th spatial level, then wouldn't the defense lines there be conquered in an instant with so many 6th-tier heavenly venerates dispatched to the 6th level as reinforcements? Even if they could eradicate all of Hysteria's army, the defense line was still gone. There had never been any cases of reclaiming lost territory. How far would Hysteria push forwards then? It was not that there had never been such incidents in history. Every time, this would be a headache for the side of the Flaming Frost Realm. Due to a moment of the slightest carelessness, they would have to pay the price of losing a massive stretch of territory. This time, no one knew what the result would be. Ling Han could not be of any help either, so he could only focus on accompanying his wife and wait patiently for the birth of his child. Very quickly, 60 million years had passed, and it was finally time for the Empress to give birth. Ling Han was circling around in anxiety, continuously pacing at the doorway. This pregnancy had taken close to 100 million years, so this child naturally would not be born in a single day. After taking a whole 7 days, this little infant was finally willing to be birthed. It was a girl. Though she had just been born, she already had exquisite features, resembling the Empress fully. Ling Han cuddled his first daughter, and a smile involuntarily bloomed on his face. Beautiful, this was his daughter. The Rain Emperor and the others had all come upon hearing the news, and when they saw Ling Han holding the newly born child in his arms, they all expressed their congratulations. What a pretty little girl. Why don't I play matchmaker and betroth her to Zhou Heng's grandson? The black donkey said, stretching his head to take a look. Ling Han almost sent out his foot in a kick. His daughter had just been born, and you were already having ideas about her? She was not marrying. No way. No matter how outstanding the guy was, she was not going to marry. Everyone delivered their first meeting gifts. There were countless Celestial King tier great herbs and divine metal, and Ling Han accepted it all without reservations. Brother Ling, this daughter of yours seems extremely extraordinary, Ji Wuming said. His aura was becoming steadier and steadier. He was not far from breaking through to the 2nd tier. Ling Han chuckled, holding his daughter like a treasure, unwilling to let others even touch her. He was very clear. This precious daughter was already a first heaven celestial king upon birth, so how could she not be extraordinary? It could not be helped. Both her parents were heavenly venerates, and they had both consolidated countless powers of dimensions. From the very moment of her birth, this kind of child would be gifted naturally, far surpassing the descendants of ordinary heavenly venerates. Ling Han had extracted the small world inside his body and had fused the core of the dimension into his daughter's body. As long as his daughter was within this small world, she would have the strength of a pseudo-heavenly venerate. How impressive! Ling Han's limelight was too strong. Even if it was not appropriate to hold any kind of celebratory events in the realm battlefield, there were still many people who paid him a visit upon hearing the news. Every single person brought valuable gifts. There were gifts which Ling Han accepted, and some he did not. He naturally would not be accepting favors for nothing. That would depend on who the other party was. And just at this time, a great event happened. It really was a great event. No one had even expected it to happen. Boom! The sky collapsed and the earth cracked as power of dimension surged out furiously, capable of destroying everything. Not good. Ling Han's expression immediately changed drastically. He had initially planned to check out the situation, yet now he did not have the slightest hesitation as he drew all the women into the celestial guest residence and then broke out in a run. In the distance, a terrifying energy storm could be seen rumbling towards them, just like how when that small world between the celestial realm and foreign realm had exploded. This was an energy storm that was created after the collision of two transcendent dimensions. It was assailing unstoppably. To say nothing of first-tier heavenly venerates, even sixth-tier heavenly venerates would not dare take it head-on and could only retreat. Xiao, xiao, xiao. One after another, figures appeared all around Ling Han, joining the ranks of the mad race. Thankfully, though the energy storm was terrifying, it was still unable to keep up with the speed of heavenly venerates. In a single stroke, they had run for millions of kilometers, and only then did everyone finally stop. They presently had already retreated completely from the realm battlefield. What in the world was going on? Before they could go and find out what was going on, they saw even more people break through space and appear, yet they were not the heavenly venerates of the second level, but rather consisted of elites from every level. The second tier, third tier, fourth tier, fifth tier, and sixth tier. All the elites had retreated from the realm battlefield except for seventh tiers. Everyone was even more curious. What on earth had happened? Zhuang, Chu Hao, and Lin Xiaoyang were all present. Aside from them, there were a number of sixth-tier, heavenly venerates as well. Everyone was looking towards them for guidance as they became the center of the crowds, exuding a domineering aura capable of suppressing everything else. There was no one who was allowed to be disrespectful. Ling Han counted, and there were more than 200 sixth-tier heavenly venerates, close to 300 of them. On average, that would mean that every high-level dimension would have around 2 to 3 each. The sixth-tier heavenly venerates were all frowning slightly. Very soon, they looked like they were listening in on something, and they showed a hint of surprise not long afterwards. Lin Xiaoyang said, "I have just received a message through divine sense from the lords at the 8th spatial level. They said that an intense battle has caused turbulence and a collision of the two dimensions. Now, this has formed an energy storm. Aside from 7th-tier heavenly venerates, no one can stand here." Everyone nodded. So that was what had happened. Hold on. Realization suddenly dawned on everyone. As the energy storm wreaked havoc, only 7th-tier heavenly venerates were actually capable of standing guard. Then wouldn't that mean? Correct. Chu Hao nodded. The energy storm this time is extremely violent. It is possible that it will never disappear. This means that we do not have any mission for the moment, nor do we need to continue fighting here. We are completely capable of going wherever we wish. This, though everyone had already thought of this, when this information was really confirmed, they still could not grow accustomed to this. In these countless years, they had been fighting and growing here. They had long since considered this place as their home, and now, all of a sudden, someone came and told them their home was gone, and there was no need for them to stand guard here any longer. They felt a blankness that came from not knowing what to do. But it was only for an instant. A great many people had already thought of what they were going to do. Return to their respective realms and become the sole overlord. Zhuang spoke, "Everyone, you can go wherever you wish. If there are any signs that the energy storm is going to disappear, we will inform you individually, and you shall return to battle." Everyone nodded. However, after fighting for so long, how could they simply disperse at a mere word? No one left at the first instant, but rather planned to wait and see. Meanwhile, Ling Han found a chance to seek an audience with Zhuang. Coincidentally, Lin Xiaoyang and Chu Hao were also present, so they met with Ling Han together. "Brat, you are quite good," Chu Hao said smilingly. Originally, he had been sure that Ling Han could only give up on his initial plans and take the route of an ordinary heavenly venerate. He had not thought that Ling Han would have given him such a pleasant surprise. "Thank you, Senior." Ling Han bowed slightly. "Dare I ask, Seniors, what are your opinions on this event? Are you suspecting that this is Hysteria's conspiracy?" Zhuang voiced out Ling Han's suspicions. He pondered for a while. "It is not like this kind of thing has never happened before in our extensive history, but the energy storm has never been as intense as this. I can confirm that this is definitely not false. The 7th tier lords have also confirmed this fact. Chapter 2800. 2800 Was it really peaceful now? Chapter 2800. 2800 Was it really peaceful now? 2800 Was it really peaceful now? An energy storm had suddenly appeared between the two realms, and even 6th tier heavenly venerates could not enter. This matter was too serious. Ling Han steeled himself and asked the 3 great 6th tier heavenly venerates whether this was a conspiracy created by hysteria. Zhuang and the others also studied and analyzed the situation in detail, but they could not discern what was fishy about this entire event. The energy storm could not be a deception. Not only had they, the 6th tier heavenly venerates, tested it, even though 7th tier heavenly venerates personally confirmed that it was real. From now onwards, only 7th tier heavenly venerates could directly battle with hysteria here, and whether it was 6th tier heavenly venerates or hysteria's creations, it was no longer possible for them to enter here. In other words, it would only be 7th tier heavenly venerates clashing directly with hysteria, and it was no longer the concern of others. In the past, this kind of thing had also happened before, but the energy storm would only last for several 100 million years, at most. It has never been as terrifying as this time, Chu Hao said. At first glance, there was nothing wrong about that. It was only that the conflict of the two dimensions was too powerful, which caused an energy storm such that not only even 6th tier heavenly venerates could not enter, the time it would last for also seemed close to endless. The Genesis world was peaceful now. It was not only Ling Han and the others. The other heavenly venerates were also analyzing and pondering, but no matter how hard they were thinking, none of them thought that this was a conspiracy of hysteria's making. Perhaps peace had truly come. Of course, the prerequisite was that those 7th tier heavenly venerates were capable of stopping hysteria. Otherwise, hysteria itself would be the greatest calamity. Ling Han left. Next, he naturally had to consider the matter of where he was going. With his and the Empress's cultivation path, it did not matter where they cultivated before reaching the 2nd tier. They mainly would be strengthening themselves, so it was more or less the same whichever dimension they were cultivating in. Hence, they could run all over the Genesis world now, going sightseeing and enjoying these rare days of peace. But if they stayed here, it would at least increase their speed of cultivation a bit. After all, this was the only transcendent dimension. Moreover, Ling Han had already taken all those close to him here, so there was no reason that compelled him to return to the celestial realm. Ling Han decided to live in seclusion for a while and watch his daughter grow up. This was his greatest desire now. The women naturally would not object. Hence, Ling Han returned to where his parents were and began his life of seclusion. When Ling Dongxing and his wife knew that Ling Han had gained a precious daughter, they were also happy for him. In fact, they doted on the little girl even more than he did. They would be holding her constantly in their arms, unwilling to put her down. Then, there was an extremely important matter, and that was naming the little girl. The right to name her was directly taken away from Ling Han. Just look at what kind of names he had given to those animals. If this guy was allowed to name her, the little girl would probably be cursing him secretly in future. This made Ling Han very depressed. He dragged the large black dog out with him for a drinking binge, forcing so much alcohol into the large black dog that he was drunk for a considerable number of days. After everyone's discussions, they decided to name the little girl Ling Shi. Originally, Ling Han was not very happy, but upon further thought, a name was merely a code name. What did it matter whether he was the one to name her or not? For example, if he wanted to, he completely could give his daughter a nickname like Baby or something. Ling Han set everything aside and simply stayed by his daughter's side. At the same time, he also continued to work hard, hoping that he could have more children, but this kind of thing really couldn't be rushed. Ling Shi grew very slowly. Others would have already become young girls after over a dozen years, but she still did not look much different from when she had just been born. She was still drinking milk and couldn't talk either, only being capable of making baby talk. Ling Han couldn't help but sweat. It can't be that we have become parents of a silly girl, right? In the end, not only did the women all roll their eyes at him, even Ling Dongxing and Ling Han's mother smacked him a few times on the head. How could anyone speak of their own daughter like that? This was because Ling Han was too anxious. Though he did not want to see his daughter mature so quickly, the fact that she had not grown even the slightest bit after a dozen or so years naturally made him feel slightly agitated. This was too slow, wasn't it? However, Ling Shi was still slowly growing. 30 years later, she finally began learning how to talk and was indescribably adorable. 100 years later, she had grown to look like a 3- or 4-year-old toddler and was as cute and enchanting as a little elf. Every single member of the Ling clan loved this little princess to bits. In fact, when Zhuang and Chu Hao came to pay them a visit and saw this little girl, they both instantly wanted to set up a betrothal between her and their grandson. In the end, no matter what they did, Ling Han still adamantly refused. Unlike Ling Jianxue in his childhood, Ling Shi was obedient, astonishingly gentle and quiet. Since childhood, she already had the bearing of a young mistress of a noble clan. Everyone praised that she would definitely be a good wife and mother in the future, which caused Ling Han great jealousy. He really wanted to strangle that damn brat who would be taking his daughter away from him in the future to death. He lived in seclusion here, but there were no genuine secrets in this world. Moreover, wherever he was, that place was a sacred land. This small place gradually developed and became well known. The model of a city appeared, and after everyone discussed it, it was once again named Ling City. Feng Piyun, Murongqing, and the Rain Emperor all gradually left on their travels, but as long as Ling Han was here as overseer, what would they have to worry about? Ling Shi's progress in cultivation was shockingly quick. With Ling Han's guidance and nurturing, celestial king-tier great herbs would naturally be available easily, and with the core of a dimension helping her to comprehend Tao, as well as having Wally become her teacher, the little girl soon advanced to the second heaven. Furthermore, her foundations were extremely strong at that. 300 years passed, and the little girl looked to be 7 or 8 years old by now. Everyone was discussing whether they should send Ling Shi into the world's paramount martial academy. Ling Han naturally objected adamantly. Wouldn't it be better for him to teach her? Why did she have to go to the martial academy? Thus, this matter was set aside. Time passed quickly, and another 1,000 years had passed. Ling Shi finally looked like she was in her early teens. Her personality became quieter, but her appearance was also resembling that of the Empress more and more, yet her style was the complete opposite of the Empress. The Empress was cool and aloof, noble and graceful, while Ling Shi was easily approachable and did not put on any airs at all. On this day, Ling Shi suddenly said to Ling Han that she wanted to cultivate in the world's paramount martial academy. She gave a great many reasons, and the biggest reason was how Ling Han had not only entered into the martial academy when he had been at the third heaven, he had even cultivated at the Celestial King graveyard. She wanted to follow in her father's footsteps. Though the little girl was quiet and gentle, Ling Han knew that she was just like him in her bones, having an extraordinarily stubborn personality. Once she had already made her decision on a matter, no one would be able to make her change her mind. Ling Han could only agree. After all, there was nothing dangerous in the martial academy. However, how could a daughter-spoiling madman possibly rest easy? Ling Han told his daughter to wait for a while, and ventured to a low-level dimension again, digging out that small world. After refining it with his great power, he placed it within Ling Shi's body. In this way, Ling Shi only had to extract the energy of the small world, and she could possess the power of a pseudo-heavenly venerate. That should be enough, right? Ling Han was still worried, and decided to forge a few more treasures for his daughter. In the end, all of the women were complaining. Thankfully, Ling Shi was not the type to be mischievous. Otherwise, wouldn't this little girl dismantle the whole martial academy when she went to the academy? Only then did Ling Han stop sheepishly and send his daughter to the world's paramount martial academy. He also knew that he had caused quite a large amount of trouble when he had been there, so he did not expose his identity. After sending his daughter into the martial academy, he had even stayed a considerable number of months outside on purpose. Once he had confirmed that his daughter could grow accustomed to life here, he then returned to Ling City. However, something had happened in Ling City. Chapter 2801. 2801 He Liqun blocked the city. Chapter 2801. 2801 He Liqun blocked the city. 2801 He Liqun blocked the city. Something happened to Ling City. An elite had blocked the entrance, and no one was allowed to enter or exit the city. One that even the Empress couldn't handle? Indeed, she couldn't handle it, because the person who came was a fourth-tier, heavenly venerate. He Liqun. It was nothing strange for him to appear. He had previously suffered a huge loss at the hands of Ling Han, and coupled with his son's personal grudge, he was definitely not going to spare Ling Han. Now that the crisis of hysteria had been lifted, the restraints on the heavenly venerates no longer existed. Originally, they were united in stance towards an external enemy. Now that there was no need to confront the external enemy, the heavenly venerates ought to be fighting for their own personal grievances. He Liqun had taken so long to come here because he hadn't known where Ling Han had been before, but with the growth of Ling City, it was naturally impossible for it to become a secret anymore. What surprised Ling Han was that He Liqun just blocked the entrance and did not make a move. Ling Han, you have finally appeared. He Liqun sneered. I didn't make a move, because I wanted you to taste the feeling of betrayal and isolation. He paused for a moment, and then reiterated, Everyone, listen up. You are to leave Ling City within 1 month. Otherwise, in 1 month's time, I will wipe out the entire Ling City with my own hands, and those who remain shall die. It turned out this was his idea. Ling Han really wanted to give him a piece of advice. That villains usually died because of talking too much, let alone when rambling on for a month. He Liqun, you truly are outstanding. Ling Han shook his head, his tone full of disdain. Fuck, what's with your tone? Instantly, He Liqun had the urge to kill him, but when he thought of the humiliation Ling Han had brought to him and his son, he forcibly suppressed it. Simply killing Ling Han could not relieve him of his hatred. The latter had to be severely punished. 1 month later, he would kill Ling Han, who has completely lost all family and friends, and then extract the heavenly venerable seals being held by the other party and take them for his personal use. He Liqun wasn't worried that Ling Han's strength would increase by leaps and bounds within this month, or that he might get reinforcements, because the entire Ling City had been sealed off, and it would be impossible for any news to be disseminated. He still had this much confidence in himself. As long as Ling Han came back, he would be trapped. Ling Han, I will give you 1 month's time to make arrangements for your funeral, He Liqun said coldly, sitting cross-legged at the city gate while unleashing his powerful aura, which engulfed the entire Ling City. He had done it on purpose. Under such a powerful aura, the people in Ling City would definitely tremble in fear, and their only thoughts would be to escape. Ling Han smiled lightly. All right, we will battle again in a month's time. He also wanted to see how many people would find it unbearable and flee the city. Ling City had no need for such disloyal people. Ling Han entered the city as if nothing had happened, talking and laughing with his wives. Naturally, he had a plan in mind. Firstly, he still possessed the letter that Chu Hao had left with him, and tearing it open would unleash a 5th-tier attack, which naturally could destroy a 4th tier with ease. Secondly, as long as Ling Han wasn't in a chaotic place such as the realm battlefield, he could traverse freely through the Genesis world, and no one could stop him from doing so. Hence, he truly wasn't afraid of He Liqun, and it wasn't impossible to kill the other party. Day by day, He Liqun's pressure seemed to have solidified. Indeed, this was the pressure emanating from a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, so strong that even a 9th heaven celestial king would be trembling under such power and not be able to withstand it. Most of the folks in Ling City were merely ordinary people, so how could they bear it? Naturally, the businessmen fled immediately. They had nothing to do with Ling City in the first place, so why would they stay? Then, some families who were not firm in there will also began to evacuate. They firmly believed that Ling Han would be defeated, so they naturally didn't want to go down with Ling City in defeat. Ling Han didn't stop them, as he really didn't have the right to ask others to live and die together with him. However, these people needed not stay in Ling City in the future anymore, as they absolutely weren't welcome. As time passed day by day, the Feng clan, Murong clan, and Cheng clan also showed hesitation. Of course, Feng Piyun and Murong Qing were more than willing to advance and retreat with Ling Han, but their descendants did not have much of a connection with Ling Han. When Ling Han was strong, they were willing to stick close to him and gain some glory, but once Ling Han was in a disadvantageous position and even put them in a precarious situation, then they naturally would not want to die together with him. At the beginning, they had hoped that Ling Han would pull out a trump card and blow up this external enemy. However, the 1-month deadline was getting closer and closer, and yet Ling Han still didn't make any movements, which naturally made them lose their patience. They feared Ling Han's vengeance, so they moved stealthily and suddenly fled on a certain night. Of course, a minority of people chose to stay. Not everyone was ungrateful, after all. However, such people were really too few. This was true even for those 3 major clans, not to mention the other smaller clans attached to them. They were completely gone. All of Ling Han's wives were extremely upset and angry, while Ling Dongxing and his wife were worried about their son, not knowing how they would all get through this catastrophe. Although Ling Han had comforted them, once the old couple knew that He Liqun was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, they really didn't have much confidence in Ling Han. When more than 20 days had passed, someone was heard shouting and cursing outside the city gate. Zhu Xin'er went to take a look, and when she came back, her pretty face was full of anger. It turned out that the people cursing outside the city were those who had previously escaped from Ling City. They had become turncoats and acted as if they were He Liqun's subordinates. They were all acting high and mighty. The Empress got so angry that she immediately wanted to go out and slaughter these ingrates, but was dissuaded by Ling Han. Anyway, there weren't that many days left, and when the time came, they would just settle the matter once and for all. "Husband, are you really confident?" All the women asked him one after another. After all, He Liqun was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, and these 4 words alone carried such overwhelming pressure. Ling Han smiled confidently. No problem. A few days later, there were more and more people cursing the city. Many of them were elites of the ascending origin tier, so their influence was naturally vast and mighty, and their voices clearly spread to every crook and corner of the city. Ling Han took a look from the top of the city and couldn't help saying, "I was wondering who might it be, and it turns out that He Yufeng has come." There wasn't any cursing the city attack previously, so why did it start all of a sudden? It was because previously there had been no He Yufeng, and now this guy had also arrived. He was probably the one who came up with such a terrible idea. Very well, Ling Han would just kill both father and son together in the future. Ling Han was very calm. He would just let the father and son pair be arrogant for a few more days, so as to help him get rid of all those who weren't loyal, giving Ling City a huge change. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and finally the 1-month deadline arrived. "Ling Han, come out and die," He Liqun said lightly, but his voice reverberated far and wide. He was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, powerful to the point of being indescribable. Ling Han and the Empress came out hand in hand, standing on the city wall, while the other women followed behind. They were just celestial kings, and thus had to rely on Ling Han and the Empress to withstand the oppressive aura of the 4th tier. "Ling Han, do you dare to fight?" He Yufeng jumped out with a serious gaze. He had already advanced to the 2nd tier, which could be said to be a rapid progress, thereby reigniting his confidence and thinking that he would definitely be able to suppress Ling Han. He Liqun originally wanted to stop him as he knew how far Ling Han's true strength had reached, but after thinking about it again, he thought it would be good to let his son suffer just a little bit so as to motivate him and prevent him from being too complacent. He was here, after all. As long as he could blast Ling Han to death, it wouldn't matter even if his son was defeated. The knot in his heart would be untied soon. Thinking of it this way, he didn't advise against it. Chapter 2802, 2802, Do Something About It. Chapter 2802, 2802, Do Something About It. 2802, Do Something About It. You? Ling Han shook his head. It's not that I look down on you, but you are not worthy to be my opponent. Ling Han. He Yufeng gritted his teeth. How domineering he had been back when he could actually suppress Ling Han with just one move. If Lin Piaoxue hadn't made a move back then, this guy would have already been dead long ago. How would he have had the right to be arrogant now? The Empress stood up. I'll kill you. He Yufeng became so angry that his expression turned hideous. Why was it that the people by Ling Han's side could be so arrogant? She was merely a first-tier heavenly venerate, and yet wanted to suppress himself? He gave a humph and said, Fine. I want to see this guy's expression once I suppress you. The Empress' beauty made his heart skip a beat. How painful would it be if he killed the Empress in front of Ling Han? What a good idea. Ling Han, our young master is going to suppress you. Behind them, those mutinous and unscrupulous people called out. They were cheering for He Yufeng while mocking Ling Han. Ling Han's eyes sharpened, and wherever his gaze swept, there wasn't anyone among these people who didn't lose their voice. A heavenly venerate had been angered, and the heaven and earth were moved, so who would still dare to shout? Why keep quiet? He Liqun said lightly as he turned around to give a sweeping glance, which immediately made those people's hearts beat like drums, so they could only bite the bullet, and once again started rattling off a string of curses. He Liqun stroked his beard and smiled. In the past, he had been scolded most terribly by Ling Han, but he took pride in his status, so naturally he felt disdain to bring himself to curse others. The Empress jumped out and charged murderously towards He Yufeng. Boom! The two heavenly venerates immediately started a fierce battle. After exchanging only a few blows, He Yufeng's expression turned to one of shock. The Empress' strength far exceeded his expectations. Not only was she not easily suppressed by him, she was actually even stronger than him. How was this possible? It was already bad enough with Ling Han being freakish. Why were the people around him just as freakish? The Empress' attacks became more and more severe. She had already endured for a month, and now that she could finally make a move, all of that burst out in each attack that she shot out. Ling Han nodded. Indeed, the Empress had fused the power of 100 dimensions. Although currently she was still in the middle stage of the first tier, her battle prowess was at the middle stage of the second tier, having completely crossed a cultivation level. And what about He Yufeng? Although he was a second-tier heavenly venerate, he was only in the early stage of the second tier, and his battle prowess was also in line with the cultivation level, which obviously made him inferior to the Empress. Therefore, He Yufeng was suppressed by the Empress as soon as he came up to fight. He Yufeng also knew this, but didn't worry about it too much, as battle prowess wasn't determined merely by strength alone, but also heavenly venerate techniques, heavenly venerable seals, and heavenly venerate tools. Zhuang, he drew out a sword with 7 seals glowing on it, which he had applied the power of a heavenly venerate to, and then boosted with the heavenly venerate technique and heavenly venerable seal, and unleashed his attacks towards the Empress. The Empress didn't have a heavenly venerate tool. She was at a disadvantage in this regard. She avoided the sharp sword. Wandering around continuously, she then sent out her jade-like palm in a palm strike, circulated the 9 transformations heavenly venerate, and boosted it with a heavenly venerable seal. Her battle prowess suddenly soared. As far as strength was concerned, of course the Empress was stronger, but He Yufeng had a heavenly venerate tool in hand. He wasn't in a disadvantageous position and could completely make up for the gap in strength. The two fought fiercely, but there wasn't a clear victor for a while. Anyway, it seemed both were evenly matched. However, everyone knew that He Yufeng had already lost, and it wasn't just by a tiny bit. The second tier was fighting against a first tier, and even used a heavenly venerate tool, but it was just a draw. Would you not be embarrassed? He Yufeng's face became flushed as he felt frustrated, furious, and ashamed all at once. Even the people by Ling Han's side could win against the strong from a position of weakness, being able to fight against him even if their cultivation level was lower by a minor tier. This was too unreasonable. That's enough, He Liqun shouted in a deep voice. He didn't want his son to continue suffering such psychological blows, otherwise it wouldn't be an encouragement to his son at all, but rather hitting his self-confidence and making him doubt his life. He Yufeng launched a few more attacks before stopping with great reluctance and retreating. Ling Han shook his head. My wife, with her cultivation level being the first tier, fought against you, and she nearly beat the crap out of you. Therefore, trash like you should toe the line more, and not come out to embarrass yourself. He Yufeng's eyes blazed with fire, and yet he didn't refute, because the statement was based on true facts. Ling Han crooked his finger towards He Liqun. Old geezer, it's your turn now. He Liqun sneered. An eloquent speaker you may be, but in the face of absolute strength, there will only be grievance for you. Ling Han laughed out loud. Who was the one being beaten to a pulp by me back then? If you hadn't run so fast, you would have been dead by now, right? He Liqun's gaze sharpened. When he had been thrashed by Ling Han in the past, it had actually been witnessed by everyone in public, which was a shame he could never erase. He snorted. I will accomplish what I have originally said then, which is to flatten Ling City. He made a move. Boom. Terrifying forces condensed, turned into a monstrous giant hand, and pressed towards Ling City. With the power of a fourth-tier heavenly venerate, when this blow swept past, Ling City would definitely cease to exist forever. Ling Han also made a move, immediately drawing out the divine demon sword. With a slash of the sword towards the sky, Shua, the big hand was instantly split right in the middle, and the parts fell on two opposite sides. Pong! The ground shook as these two powers hit the eastern and western side of the city, respectively, causing a strong earthquake. Ling Han held his sword and charged murderously towards He Liqun. He couldn't let the other party act recklessly, otherwise Ling City would really be reduced to ruins if he was even slightly negligent. You're seeking death, He Liqun said coldly. He naturally wouldn't be afraid of a fight, and started exchanging blows with Ling Han. He didn't care about the life or death of the surrounding people, and immediately exploded with full power. Remember that there were many unscrupulous people right behind him. At this moment, they were jolted by the power which exploded out of him, and 99% of them turned to dust. Only 4 or 5 people were spared, but they were also severely wounded and not far from death. All of them regretted it so much. Had they had known earlier, they would not have joined in the commotion and ended up losing their lives. Ling Han fought a fierce battle against He Liqun. He immediately went all out to channel the Heavenly Venerable Seal, 9 Transformations Heavenly Venerate Technique, 5 Elements Lightning Technique, and the others, but he was lacking greatly in strength due to the difference in cultivation level. There was too wide a disparity in the battle prowess between him and He Liqun. The other party just needed to make a move at will, and he could already crush Ling Han to death. Merely a first tier, He Liqun said disdainfully. But deep in his heart, he was truly shaken and in shock. A first-tier heavenly venerate could even fight so fiercely that it made him envious and resentful. However, this would eventually become history. As long as he killed this freak, it would eliminate any future trouble. Ling Han, a delicate voice suddenly rang out. Niu is back. It was Hu Niu. Friend He, do listen to me. How about letting it go? A woman's voice also rang out. Although it wasn't loud, it was filled with frightening power. He Liqun couldn't help feeling startled. He frowned and turned his head to look. A beautiful woman dressed in imperial robes was standing not too far away, holding a whisk dust in her hand, and exuding an aura of elegance and tranquility. Friend, earnest meditation. He Liqun greeted the other party with a nod of his head. She was a 4th-tier heavenly venerate whose strength was not inferior to his, and of course couldn't be taken lightly. However, it was also impossible for him to let the matter drop just like that. This matter has nothing to do with friend earnest meditation, so please don't interfere. Heavenly venerate earnest meditation shook her head. This person is the husband of my disciple. It is imperative that I do something about it. Chapter 2803. 2803, What's with your attitude? Chapter 2803, 2803, What's with your attitude? 2803, What's with your attitude? He Liqun turned his gaze, softened his attitude, and said, For your sake, friend, I can take a step back. As long as this brat kneels down and apologizes to me, I can spare him just this once. Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation let out an "oh" and inquired, "How has his boy offended you, friend?" He Liqun couldn't help it as his expression turned ugly for a brief moment. Would he have the nerve to reiterate the scandal of his devastating defeat to Ling Han in front of Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation? He shook his head and said, "You don't need to know the specific details of the process, my friend. As long as this brat will bow his head to me, I'm neither a petty nor narrow-minded person." Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation nodded slowly. Ling Han was merely a first-tier Heavenly Venerate. In that case, bowing his head to an elite of the fourth-tier level wouldn't be a big deal. She looked at Ling Han and said, "Since friend He has said so, you should kneel down and kowtow to friend He." Ling Han was talking to Hunyeo. The two hadn't seen each other for more than an epoch, so they naturally both had a lot to say. The little girl had already become a Heavenly Venerate and had even advanced to second tier, but it wasn't through gathering of power of many dimensions like the Empress, but rather she had walked the path of an ordinary Heavenly Venerate. This was also the reason why she could take the lead in cultivation level. As for Ling Han and the Empress, it would take an astonishingly long time to progress a step forward. This was the price one had to pay for being stronger at the same level. The little girl was a talkative person by nature, and coupled with the fact that they hadn't seen each other for so long, she was chattering incessantly. Ling Han gladly listened to her. At this moment, just looking at the little girl and listening to her talk filled him with happiness. "Aya, Nyo almost died several times, woo woo woo, and you stinky bastard, you haven't been by Nyo's side." The little girl pressed herself into Ling Han's embrace while scolding him in a coquettish manner. The two of them were loving and affectionate, and they simply didn't pay any attention to what the Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation was saying. The Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation couldn't help showing a look of dissatisfaction. "I have kindly stood up for you. What's with your attitude?" She coughed heavily, surging with the power of a Heavenly Venerate. Only then were Ling Han and Hunyeo shaken out of their enamoredness. Hunyeo, being extremely dissatisfied, said, "Old nun, didn't you see that Nyo is talking to Ling Han?" She had never acknowledged Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation as her master, and her attitude had always been like this, so this wasn't regarded as disobedience. The Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation had long been used to her character. It was thanks to the pure and clear heart of the little girl that she could dedicate herself wholeheartedly into the process of cultivation. Otherwise, going by her natural talent, she could only reach the level of first tier at the most. She was upset with Ling Han and said in a deep voice, "Brat, I asked you to kowtow to friend He to make amends." "No way." Before Ling Han could say anything, Hunyeo jumped up first. She knew Ling Han too well. It was absolutely impossible for him to suffer such great humiliation. The Empress also said sternly, "Old nun, you have gone too far." Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation's face twitched. Old nun? Although her title was Earnest Meditation, it had absolutely nothing to do with Buddhism. How dared she call her an old nun one? It was already enough with Hunyeo. Why was this woman doing the same? She was a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate, after all, so how dared a first-tier Heavenly Venerate be so disrespectful to her? Impudence. She glared, exuding an infinite murderous aura. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Senior, I am deeply grateful to you for standing up for me. However, it is absolutely impossible for me to kowtow to such an old beast who bullies the weak." While these words caused the Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation to feel unhappy, and He Liqun to twist his lips angrily, it was also what the latter wanted. He Liqun knew Ling Han's terrible temper very well, and knew that he wouldn't bow his head to him, so he had taken a step back on purpose. In this way, Ling Han would become someone who didn't know what was good for him, and would the Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation still want to stand up for him then? "Brat, you are going too far," the Heavenly Venerate Earnest Meditation said with dissatisfaction. As it was, she was already unhappy with Hunyeo's affection for Ling Han, and deemed Ling Han to be unworthy of her, and secondly, cultivators should put all their energy into cultivation, So how could they be so engrossed in love affairs like this? Ling Han smiled faintly. I'm afraid I'm not able to obey Senior's order. With regards to this matter, Senior needs not bother about it. The heavenly venerate earnest meditation was so angry that her brows twitched. How dared a mere first-tier, heavenly venerate be so arrogant? Was he so confident that she would stop He Liqun for him for Hunyo's sake? Humph, it would be good if Ling Han was dead. In this way, Hunyo wouldn't be infatuated with such a damn man. She waved her hand. Fine, I will not care about your business. He Liqun couldn't help showing a smug smile. From the time that he had taken a step back, he had already dug a hole for the heavenly venerate earnest meditation, being confident that Ling Han wouldn't give in to persuasion. He Liqun took a step forward. Ling Han, the opportunity has been given to you, but you didn't seize it. What a fool you are. Ling Han shook his head. He Liqun, do you think you have a good chance of winning? He Liqun sneered. I don't believe that you can overturn the current circumstances. Then you just go all out and see how I will kill you, Ling Han said lightly. I do want to give it a try, to see how you can suppress and kill me. He Liqun strode purposefully towards Ling Han. With the presence of another fourth tier, he had to destroy Ling Han with overwhelming force to avoid trouble in the future. Today, Ling Han had to die. Ling Han smiled and took out the letter that Chu Hao had given him. With the divine sense locked on He Liqun, he threw the letter, and it blasted towards He Liqun. Immediately, the letter glowed, overflowing with an extremely powerful aura. The rays of light condensed and turned into a fist, which then smashed at He Liqun and sent him flying. He Liqun turned pale with fright. This blow was too terrifying. The aura that flowed out was definitely not at the fourth tier, but rather fifth tier, no, perhaps even the sixth tier. This blow, he couldn't stop it, and he didn't even have the capability to block it. The only thing he could do was to run away. He quickly turned around and ran, fearing that he would be doomed if he even slowed down for a bit. It was just that this was Chu Hao's handiwork, which was equivalent to the attack of a sixth tier, heavenly venerate. Despite its might being only of the fifth tier, how could it be resisted by a fourth tier? Boom! A terrifying force surged through. This fist hit He Liqun's body, and He Liqun was immediately torn apart. Faced with the power of a fifth-tier heavenly venerate, the fourth-tier heavenly venerate was merely trash. The reason why Lin Yulian and the other heaven-defying freaks remained stuck in the fourth tier for so long was admittedly because they had been charging forward too aggressively and couldn't avoid the need to slow down and accumulate their energy for a bit. Simultaneously, it was also because the gap between the fifth tier and the fourth tier was too great. It didn't matter even for one as strong as He Liqun was annihilated with a single blow. The heavenly venerate earnest meditation's eyes rounded in shock. She knew it very well herself that had this blow landed on her body, then her fate would definitely have been the same as that of He Liqun couldn't be more dead if attacked. A dignified fourth-tier heavenly venerate died just like that. Who could have imagined an outcome like this? Everyone was dumbfounded, and even more so He Yufeng, who couldn't come back to his senses. His own father had just died like that. He Yufeng, it's your turn. Ling Han, being the decisive person that he was, strode forward, with complete elimination in mind. If he let go of He Yufeng this time, there was no telling just how much trouble a second-tier heavenly venerate could cause. He Yufeng gritted his teeth, and turned around and ran away all of a sudden. Just the Empress alone was enough to fight on par with him, and with the addition of Ling Han and Hunyo, he didn't think he had any chance of winning. Furthermore, this was in a situation where the heavenly venerate earnest meditation wouldn't make a move. Ling Han shook his head and reached out with his right hand, which turned into a monstrous hand that easily suppressed He Yufeng. Chapter 2804, 2804 Junior Sister. Chapter 2804, 2804 Junior Sister. 2804 Junior Sister. Ling Han stated calmly, He Yufeng, if we're being honest, was it I who had started this? He Yufeng did not answer, and merely said, if you can, just kill me. What's the point of hesitation? As a heavenly venerate, he still had that amount of backbone. Ling Han shook his head. Since that is the case, I will send you on your way." He laid down his palm, and He Yufeng was instantly smashed into bits of blood. The strength of second tier could not withstand even a single blow. The heavenly venerate earnest meditation's eyes narrowed again. It should be known that Ling Han was only a first tier heavenly venerate. A first tier was actually so powerful, possessing the strength of a third tier. No, a peak stage third tier. Hiss, she had been mistaken. She had truly been mistaken. At first, she had thought that Ling Han was not worthy of Hunyo, but from the look of things now, as long as Ling Han could maintain this kind of growth and continue, would there be anyone that could match him in this world when he reached the 5th tier or 6th tier? Of course, the path of a heavenly venerate was extremely difficult to walk. The extreme majority of heavenly venerates would only be able to take one step forwards in a whole epoch. How could it be so easy for Ling Han to be completely invincible? It was possible that he would die long before his time while he was still maturing. Ling Han withdrew his hand and nodded towards the heavenly venerate earnest meditation. "Senior, come in and take a seat. Allow me to serve you some tea as courtesy." The heavenly venerate earnest meditation agreed. She was extremely interested in Ling Han and wanted to know how he had been cultivating to become this strong. Everyone entered Ling City together. Those who had previously abandoned the city, too, wanted to follow them in, but they were coldly refused entrance. Ling Han did not demand that they help, but these people had forgotten Ling Han's previous kindness and fled when Ling Han was in danger, and wanted to come back to worship him now that the danger was over. How could these broken bridges be mended? Though Ling Han was only a first-tier heavenly venerate, the heavenly venerate earnest meditation did not dare to underestimate this young man. Just look, He Liqun's body was still warm. She had no wish to follow in his footsteps, though she suspected that it was possible that Ling Han should not have this kind of trump card anymore. But suspicion was suspicion. How could it be that she would use her own life to bring this matter to a test? The heavenly venerate earnest meditation abandoned her airs. As one who had cultivated to the 4th tier, she had astonishing experiences. No matter where the conversation headed, she could talk eloquently about the topic, as if she had invested boundless energy in it. She stayed a few days at Ling City and then left alone. Hunyo had already reached the 2nd tier, and there was not much she could provide guidance for this disciple of hers anymore. Whatever height Hunyo could reach in the future would have to depend on Hunyo herself. Though an epoch had passed, Hunyo's personality had not changed in the slightest. When she found out that Ling Han and the Empress already had a daughter, she was extremely jealous, bawling every day. Then, she would cling to Ling Han in various ways, wanting Ling Han to give her a little baby as well. Time passed swiftly, and a good number of years passed. The news of the death of He Liqun and his son also spread out gradually, intimidating quite a number of people who bore ambitious ideas. Originally, now that the war had ended, and the previous rules prohibiting infighting naturally no longer existed, quite a number of people coveted that heavenly venerable seal that Ling Han had obtained at Black Waterfall Mountain. However, they had not moved as fast as He Liqun, and that was why they had been one step behind. Still, there was an advantage to being late. Just look, they were all feeling very fortunate. If they had been in the lead, the ones killed would not have been He Liqun and his son, but rather them instead. The question was, did Ling Han still have this kind of trump card? No one dared to easily test this out. They had all cultivated to the heavenly venerable tier, so who would not cherish their own life? Moreover, Ling Han's battle prowess had reached peak stage 3rd tier. At least 4th tier battle prowess had to be mobilized to force out his trump card. Battle prowess at the 4th tier? How many such elites were there? Which one of them was not the overlord of their territory? Would they be willing to work for others and test Ling Han? Hence, Ling Han had clearly revealed his whereabouts, yet no one went to Ling City to cause him any trouble. However, Ling Han knew that this was only temporary. Heavenly venerable seals were too valuable, and there would definitely be some who could not keep from making a move. The only question was who would be the first to make the move. Another year passed, and an uninvited visitor arrived in Ling City. "Junior sister, I'm here to see you." A voice rang out boomingly, causing the whole Ling City to tremble. "Junior sister?" What junior sister? The Empress was the first to leap out. She stood in midair and asked, "Who is it?" "I am Zhuang Kailuan. Dare I ask if my junior sister, Hunyo, is here?" A man asked. He had an extremely sturdy build and a very strong aura. The Empress's eyes widened slightly. The pressure that this man gave her was close to what Ling Han exuded, so his battle prowess should be about the same, which was at the 3rd tier. She nodded. "Hunyo is indeed here." Zhang Kailuan was very polite and said, "Then please help me to inform her." "Big Rock, what are you looking for Nyo for?" Hunyo appeared, but she was draped over Ling Han's back. At present, the little girl was clinging to Ling Han, trying to make up for their epoch-long separation. When Zhang Kailuan saw this, his expression instantly changed drastically. He liked this junior sister, and ever since the heavenly venerate earnest meditation had brought Hunyo back, and he had first set eyes on her, he had already fallen in love with this quirky, mischievous little junior sister. But he had concentrated on cultivation and was not good at expressing himself. In any case, the lifespan of heavenly venerates was unlimited, so he was not in a rush, either. He had not thought that this period of seclusion would be slightly longer, and the moment he came out of seclusion, he heard the heavenly venerate earnest meditation tell him that Hunyo was not coming back, as she was going to spend wonderful days with her little lover. Thus, he immediately charged over, wanting to save his junior sister from Ling Han's evil grasp. "Junior sister, how could you act like this?" Zhang Kailuan immediately rebuked, jealousy written all over his face, as if he had witnessed his wife cheating on him. Ling Han was not happy now. Was there any need for his wife to be ordered around by others? He immediately spread out his hands and said, "I say, are you in any position to rebuke her?" "Humph, and who are you?" Zhang Kailuan demanded condescendingly. Though the heavenly venerate earnest meditation had expressed a very high opinion of Ling Han in her words, Zhang Kailuan definitely would not believe that a first-tier heavenly venerate could possess 3rd-tier battle prowess. This had to be because the heavenly venerate earnest meditation doted on Hunyo too much and had exaggerated the matter. Go, go, go. Don't worry unnecessarily." Ling Han waved a hand dismissively. "A mere 1st-tier heavenly venerate actually dares to act insolent in front of me?" Zhang Kailuan was also feeling slight disbelief. He had never seen such an arrogant 1st-tier heavenly venerate. Could it be that Ling Han did not know that he was a 3rd tier? Furthermore, he had already cultivated to peak stage 3rd tier, and was only just a little bit away from attaining 4th tier. Zhang Kailuan thought for a while, and then understood. As he thought, Ling Han should indeed have some talent, and that was why he had developed such a condescending, arrogant personality. Humph, in that case, there was more reason for him to interfere now. How could he easily leave his junior sister to such a pompous, grandiose man? "Looks like I need to teach you a good lesson about the need to maintain an attitude of absolute respect towards elites," he declared proudly, and stretched out his hand towards Ling Han. Power condensed, turning into a greenish-black giant hand that moved to enshroud Ling Han. "Big Rock, Nyo is going to beat you until you burst." Hunyo was the first to flip out, and leaped up from Ling Han's back. A silvery radiance was wrapped around her fist as she moved to retaliate against that greenish-black giant hand. "Junior sister," Zhang Kailuan exclaimed, and hurriedly withdrew his giant hand. He was worried that he would accidentally wound Hunyo. In this manner, his attack dispersed on its own. "Big Rock, scram. Nyo hates you." Hunyo waved her hand, looking like she was swatting away a fly. Chapter 2805, 2805 Bothered Beyond Tolerance. Chapter 2805, 2805 Bothered Beyond Tolerance. 2805 Bothered Beyond Tolerance. Zhang Kailuan felt stifled by Hunyo's words. He glared fiercely at Ling Han, and thought Ling Han had to be responsible for this. "What are you looking at me like that for?" Ling Han shook his head. "Firstly, when I met Hunyo, who knew where you were then? Secondly, you are truly a busybody, butting too much into the matters of others, aren't you?" Zhang Kailuan was instantly half dying from fury. He had been living for a good number of epochs, But as for Ling Han, he had only been alive for over an epoch at most. What did he mean by saying that, when I met Hunyo? Who knew where you were then? Why was this brat's tone so arrogant? But Hunyo clearly wanted to defend him, so Zhang Kailuan could only be cautious in his movements, but dared not make a move. He felt resentful. This brat was really such a freeloader. Ling Han smiled faintly. You are very defiant, aren't you? Come, make your move in battle, and let me see just how capable you are. Zhang Kailuan was practically in disbelief. A mere first-tier heavenly venerate actually dared to provoke him like this. Had he lost his senses? Yet Hunyo clapped her hands and said laughingly, Ling Han, teach this stinky rock a good lesson. She had absolute confidence in Ling Han. Since Ling Han was taking the initiative to issue a challenge, he had to be sure of his chances. This was Hunyo's trust in Ling Han. There was no need for Ling Han to say anything at all. Ling Han nodded. Got it. Yet Zhang Kailuan was extraordinarily outraged. Just to show off in front of Hunyo, this brat had really abandoned all pride. He clenched his fist and decided to give Ling Han a harsh beating. For the sake of Hunyo, he would not kill Ling Han, but he would definitely make this guy who had no measure of himself and only boasted know the meaning of respect. Ling Han was the first to attack. Shio. In a flash, his figure instantly appeared in front of Zhang Kailuan and threw a straight-up punch towards his face. You are truly arrogant. Zhang Kailuan was so infuriated that he was smiling. Such a head-on punch could only be used when both sides were equal in strength, or even when one completely overwhelmed the other. A first-tier heavenly venerate actually dared to make a move like this against a third-tier heavenly venerate? Just how outrageously brazen was he? Zhang Kailuan also threw out a punch, wanting to give Ling Han an unforgettable lesson. Boom! The two men's fists crashed into one another, immediately causing a violent surge of energy of heaven and earth. Pong, pong, pong. The space in their surroundings exploded endlessly. Thankfully, Ling Han had taken the initiative to attack first, and the two men had begun their battle in the skies. Otherwise, with the impact of the resultant shock wave, Ling City would be immediately destroyed. Zhang Kailuan was stunned. The force of Ling Han's punch had completely exceeded his expectations, reaching a level that was close to his equal. Though he was slightly inferior, he could completely consider Ling Han as an opponent of the same level. A first tier that was his equal? That had to be a joke. Ling Han waved out his right arm, and Zhang Kailuan was sent backwards by the impact. He slowly withdrew his fist. How about it? Zhang Kailuan's expression instantly became extremely solemn. He finally knew that the praises that the heavenly venerate earnest meditation had for Ling Han had not been the slightest bit exaggerated. In fact, she had been tactful, probably because she had no wish to strike a blow to her disciple's self-esteem. A first-tier heavenly venerate having the battle prowess of a third tier. This had no precedent and had never been seen in the past or present. However, Zhang Kailuan would not be giving up so easily. Because not only did he like Hunyo, he himself was also a madman that thirsted for battle. Come fight me, he shouted loudly, and charged towards Ling Han. Pong, pong, pong. The two men battled fiercely. Every single one of those who could become a heavenly venerate was a prodigy among prodigies, and had heaven-defying luck. There was no need to doubt that. However, there were some prodigies that were even more outstanding than the rest, and had fused the unique power of not only a single dimension so that their battle prowess would be able to suppress all their peers when they had been at the first tier. Firstly, this was because he himself had outstanding natural talent, and secondly, it was also related to their background. If Ling Han had not wanted to become invincible among his peers, he would not have walked the cultivation path of fusing the power of dimensions of all the great dimensions. Even if he could. So what? After the opportunity was missed, there would be no chance for regrets. As for Zhang Kailuan, his natural talent was unknown, but seeing as how Hunyo had not fused more powers of dimensions, it could be confirmed that this line did not have this kind of cultivation method. Hence, Zhang Kailuan was only an ordinary third tier in truth. There were pitifully few heavenly venerates that could have tier-surpassing battle prowess. After all those who could reach the first tier could not be any more prodigious. Zhuang Kailuan unleashed his full battle prowess, but Ling Han always had a way to deal with him. If the former used a heavenly venerable seal, so would he, and if the former used a heavenly venerate technique, so did he. As for heavenly venerate tools, both had their own. They fought intensely, clashing continuously for 3 days and nights, yet still the battle was undecided. Finally, Zhuang Kailuan resolutely stopped fighting. He had already used all his heavenly venerable seals, and he was going to battle another day. The two of them had equal strength, so if Zhuang Kailuan wanted to leave, Ling Han would not be able to stop him. Ling Han, you're amazing. Niu jumped up and climbed onto Ling Han's back. Niu can't beat this big rock, and it's Niu's Ling Han that is more awesome. Ling Han laughed loudly. Of course. After several days, Zhuang Kailuan came again. Nothing needed to be said. They just battled again. The two men battled for 4 days, and Zhuang Kailuan had become smarter this time. He did not use all his ultimate moves at the first moment, dragging out the battle until the 4th day, yet the battle still ended in a draw. He rested for a few days, and then came back for another battle. Every time, Zhuang Kailuan did not get much of an upper hand, but he would make a comeback a few days after every battle. At the beginning, Ling Han did not mind having a sparring partner. Most importantly, this guy was too stubborn. 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. It felt like Zhuang Kailuan was fixated on Ling Han, stuck to him like gum. He could not win the battle, but he would not lose either, so he shamelessly refused to leave. Ling Han couldn't help but feel depressed. If he had another letter, he would definitely smack it onto this guy. He was too annoying. However, Zhuang Kailuan's tenacity was extraordinary. Back and forth, and 30,000 years had already passed in the blink of an eye. By now, the people in Ling City all knew about Zhuang Kailuan. At the beginning, they had been a little worried. This was a heavenly venerate that was charging over. However, now they were used to it already. If he wanted to come, just let him come then. In any case, he would leave after fighting for a few days. Ling Han was really close to going mad. How could there be anyone so shameless? Husband, why don't we leave? Helian Xuanxue suggested. That's right. We can go to various places and eat. Niu declared, clapping her hands. When she spoke of eating, her eyes were bright. Even if she had become a heavenly venerate, she still had her original personality, which did not change in the slightest. It was very easy for Ling Han to leave. He could just directly traverse the Genesis world and go easily to whichever dimension he chose. The women all looked towards Ling Han, all thinking that this was a good idea. Otherwise, Zhuang Kailuan would come and issue challenges all the time, which seriously affected the quality of their married life. For example, they had just been about to proceed with the great matter of increasing the number of members of the Ling clan when Zhuang Kailuan had suddenly called out from outside, and Ling Han left. How could that be condoned? Ling Han also thought seriously. If it was really a battle of equals, suppressing Zhuang Kailuan would naturally be a piece of cake for him, but the problem now was that he was still a first tier. Furthermore, because there were too many powers of dimension inside his body, and he was invincible in a battle of equal cultivation levels, he would need an astonishing amount of time for every step forwards precisely for the same reason. How could he possibly improve in mere tens of thousands of years? I need more heavenly venerable seals, Ling Han said. Only when he obtained enough heavenly venerable seals would he be able to advance his cultivation level rapidly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.